This is Jocko Podcast number 179 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
So, the Spear Danes in days gone by and the kings who ruled them had courage and greatness. We have heard of those princes' heroic campaigns. There was Shield Chieftain, scourge of many tribes, a wrecker of mead benches, rampaging among foes. This terror of the hall troops had come far. A foundling to start with, he would flourish later on. As his powers waxed and his worth was proved. In the end, each clan on outlying coasts beyond the Whale Road had to yield to him and begin to pay tribute. That was one good king. Boom. Opening with a little bit of Beowulf, and that is the opening of Beowulf, translated by Seamus Haney. And what I notice is even back in the day, in the opening of the original Old English poem, the first one written, what are they talking about? They're talking about war, and they're talking about leadership. And you can hear in the beginning, he was a little bit of a weak leader. He was a foundling to start with, but he would flourish later on, became a good king. And that's what happens. You learn, you get better, and that is why we talk about war and leadership here. And speaking of war and leadership, back for a third time, my brother, Jason Gardner, retired Master Chief, who I've known since I got into the teams in the early 90s. He's been on the podcast before, so if you haven't listened to 167 and 168, go listen to those first. There's a lot of ground covered on those podcasts, and I told him to listen in and listen to him again and see what we missed so we could go back, and that's what we're going to do now. Cover some more ground, hit some of that stuff that we missed. So, welcome back, Jason.
Thank you.
Check. When I first got that translation, which was actually when I was in college, and it starts off with "so." I just said, oh my God, this is totally legit. So I start things with "so" a lot now. When I write, I do that. So, yeah, welcome back. How's retirement treating you?
Good to go. I was going to say awesome, but I beat awesome absolutely to death in the last two podcasts, so I'm going to try and ban it from my...
Did your Southern California childhood creep out with some awesome?
Yes.
Everything is awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. So you got to watch out for that. So what did we miss? I know we missed something from your youth. What were you talking about? The best show you ever saw? The best punk rock show you ever saw?
Yeah. There was one that, and this is before I could even drive. A buddy of mine, Justin Hawkins and Alicio, went up to this gig at Cypress College, and it was D.I., Plain Rap, the Dickies, the Vandals,
wow,
the Circle Jerks, and there might have been one other band for $7 in pre-sale.
Yeah.
So we got pre-sale tickets. We went up there, got in. There was probably about 500 people outside who weren't able to get in because it sold out.
Oh, wow.
So they just went ahead and knocked the doors down and all flooded in. So what that meant was nobody got searched coming in for security, and people had crazy stuff like firecrackers. It was way overcrowded for, what the safe amount for the building was. So when you went up by where the doors were, the security guys had just pushed all these tables and chairs and were sitting on them up against the doors to keep anybody else from coming in. And the show was just unreal. There were 3 mosh pits, and then when the Circle Jerks came out, they opened up with Wild on the Streets. The whole floor exploded. One of the pits started floating, crashed into another pit. People were throwing bricks of firecrackers around. It was mass pandemonium. It was so much fun.
And so you were like 14 or 15?
15 years old, yeah. My mom had dropped me off at the pit. dropped us off there.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Good for your mom.
Oh, yeah, she's good
That's
to go.
squared away, man. That's squared away.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, if parents try and shield their kids from that, or they won't let them go, then you would have just snuck out. They would have never known where you were.
Yep, and gotten in trouble.
And you would have rebelled against it. Right?
Yeah.
Because that's
exactly.
what happens. If your parents try and control you too much, it's kind of like with any person, right? You try and control them too much, then they get out of control. They rebel against you.
Right. It was a discussion I think I was having the other day with your daughter about people just trying to box people in. And it's another example of over-centralized command. And
yes, it is.
Too much stuff like that, they're just going to go the other way.
I was actually I was talking about this with a leader in a company, and I was explaining, because like for sure money drives people, compensation drives people, but ability to choose your fate or have some influence over your fate is a also very powerful motivator and incentive for people to follow. So when you have like if you have one job where you make more money but you don't have any freedom and you don't have any control over your own fate, versus a job where you get paid less money but you have really a lot of autonomy, most people will go with the autonomy. There are rare people that don't want any autonomy. They just pretty much want to get told, hey, give me my paycheck, I'll do whatever you tell me to do, and that's fine. And they're not into their job. But a lot of people, the more autonomy you give them, the more into it they are, the more they enjoy what they're doing. Whereas if you're just micromanaging them or centralized command scenario, they're not into it, and that's a problem.
And that the first person you gave the example of probably exercises no initiative whatsoever.
Exactly. You know what? You have to address that. You have to address that when we're working with companies, that there are people that they just want to get their paycheck. They're going to punch the clock at 4:59 every day, and that's the way it is. They don't want to get promoted. They're fine with that. And so you got to know, and you know, my answer to those people always is, oh, if you're leading someone like that, okay, you know what you've got, get the most out of them, take good care of them, and they'll do their job well, and you know you can count on them for that. So that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Just that somebody that does have higher goals or different goals, I guess, where they want to break out of that, then you got to give them the opportunity. And those people, if you box them in, they're going to rebel against you. You got to look out. Yeah. They'll be like Jason Gardner, age 15, with a mohawk. Check. So I know one of the other things that you wanted to talk about a little bit was Scotty Wirtz.
That's right. You know, and just coming right after Memorial Day, it's really fitting to discuss him. Scotty was a good friend of mine, just a fantastic team guy. He did 6 years in the teams and then separated in 2005, and he did what a lot of guys did at the time was he started contracting overseas because he wanted to be at that point of friction. And for Scotty, I don't think he was ever happier than when he was at that point of friction. So he did a bunch of contracting. He wound up getting hired by the Defense Intelligence Agency as a GS position, a full-time position. And then this last January, he was killed by a suicide bomber when he was out operating in Syria. And I remember when I got the text message, we were all in a group text that he'd passed, and I just, man, it kind of floored me for a second. But then, you know, it's like Scotty died doing what he loved. And he was he was a maniac in the best sense of the word. Like, the hardest I've ever laughed in my life is with him. And most people will tell you that anytime they've had a good belly laugh or something, it was with Scotty. And he had that kind of contagious smile where you look at pictures, and Seth is a lot like this. When I look at Seth's pictures, he's got that smile that just has that special thing about it that automatically makes you smile. Then you know you are not ever going to be the voice of reason, and you are always going to be a good time, and you're a good friend. And so while there's remorse that he's not here anymore, I'm so fired up that I got to spend the time with him that I did. And so anyway, I mean, there you really have it. He passed. He's from St. Louis, so they had a big funeral for him there, and it was at this Catholic cathedral. There had to be 1,000 people inside that cathedral, and it was raining the day they had it. So the funeral procession from the cathedral to the military cemetery where they buried him had to be like at least 30 miles. Every single overpass on the freeway on the drive there had fire trucks and first responders out on it. The freeway, they shut the freeway down. Every exit was stopped by police officers, which is pretty dang cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But then when we got off the freeway and we were driving on the surface streets, the people of St. Louis just pulled their cars over and they were standing at attention out in the rain. Mm-hmm. And so it's moving when someone in uniform does that, but you almost kind of expect that out of them. But when you see like a 30-year-old mother of two and her two like 8-year-old kid and 7-year-old kid, mm-hmm. standing at attention with their hands in the heart over their hearts in the rain, and it was a cold rain as he went by, it's an amazing and humbling experience to see that kind of love and respect by the people of this country and the people of St. Louis.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was with Chris Kyle's procession going down to where he was buried, and that was a long drive. I want to say it was a few hours. Wow. And the entire thing, and again, it was raining. Same thing. We're in Texas, but it's raining, and sure enough, I mean, people were lined the entire way, and I was riding with one other guy, and it was just, and we were in there was a massive procession of people, but it was just, I remember sitting there for a long time, and it's just the windshield wipers just going back and forth when we're not talking, because there's nothing to say. You can't put words to that. You can't put words to thousands of people standing out in the rain with their hands on their hearts, just every bridge, fire trucks, flags hung up from the ladders extended. Yeah, that same type of feeling that I had when I was doing that. And it definitely makes you realize that regardless of all the, what do they say these days, that America is division, all this division that everyone talks about, there's plenty of people that understand what it takes to keep this country free, for sure. Absolutely.
I feel like it's such a small and maybe vocal minority that's out there, and I don't think it's on a whole. I think we're on, even though a lot of us have our differences, and I think we're figuring out how to discuss politics just by looking at how people discuss stuff on social media, and people are dialing it in, and they're able to have realistic discussions with each other without getting too hateful. Mm-hmm. And there's some people that are still figuring that out.
Yeah, for sure. I'll say two things about that. I was on Ben Shapiro's podcast.
Yeah.
And Ben was like, and Ben's a real nice guy. He's very nice to me and all that. And he's what's pretty cool about him is he's like got this running list of everything that he said that's stupid or wrong or whatever, mm-hmm. His mea culpa list. But anyways, as we were having this conversation, he was hinting at the fact of this massive division and the massive right against the massive left, and I said, listen, man, I travel our whole country all the time. I work with construction companies, with finance companies, with, now you do too, insurance mm-hmm. companies. I mean, we meet people from every different industry. I said, these people aren't on the extreme right. They're not on the extreme left. They're common sense. They're Americans. And I said, you, Ben, you're like here at ground zero for political like mayhem. And so what do you expect to see? Like you're the lightning rod for a lot of this stuff. And so that's what you hear. I said, normal America, it isn't really like that. It's just not. I'm out there all the time. You're out there all the time now. You see it. No one's coming up to you saying, with some extreme views. Are there a small number of people? Sure. On both sides? Yes, absolutely. But in general, people are realizing, oh, well, that's not a bad point. And then I was on Brian Koppelman's podcast, and we were talking about the same thing. And what's interesting is, Ben Shapiro's pretty far on the right, and Brian Koppelman's pretty far on the left, and me. I think they're both really nice guys that are super cool. But what I said to him was, what you're saying, what I believe is leading to the attitude kind of shifting is basically this. If you're not humble and you think you know everything, then why should I listen to anything that you say? If I'm on the far left, why should I listen to anything? I know everything and everyone on the right is wrong. If I'm on the far right, why should I listen to anything that anyone's saying on the other side? I know everything. If you're humble and you say, you know what, I've got some ideas, but I'm probably not 100% right. Maybe I'm only 98% right. Mm-hmm. No, if you just look at other people and say, oh, you know what, I probably don't have the full solution for this. Maybe I should listen to other people's opinions and try and come up with a more broad-based idea than just what I think. So I think people are starting to realize if you take one extreme view and you don't listen to anyone else, then you're wrong. And so I think people are becoming a little bit more balanced. I certainly hope.
Yeah. And I know that I've got some really, really close friends that are on both ends of the spectrum. And when I sit down with them and have a logical conversation with them, I find out that our values they're the same.
Yeah.
And really it's just a lot of misrepresentation and some unfortunate semantics sometimes that have drawn us to different directions or put us on different sides. And, that's it.
Speaking of the left hand and the right hand.
This is great.
You got to tell the story about, and this is a good revealing story about, I allude to oftentimes the dark sense of humor in the teams, and there's a dark sense of humor in the military, and you kind of have to have a dark sense of humor. And I think, did you see the movie Range 15?
No.
Oh, okay. It's just a crazy movie that Tim Kennedy and Matt Best and the Black Rifle Coffee Company.
Oh yeah,
all those guys.
They throw the keys to the girl.
Yeah, It's just every horrible dark joke that you can make, they make, and I don't know how well it did or whatever. It did good enough. I mean, I'm sure it offended a lot of people.
Yeah.
But they did it. So good on them. But you talk about that kind of dark sense of humor, and I think this story, which you called me, I don't know, whatever it was, 6 months ago or whatever, you go, I gotta tell you a story. Which whenever you call me and tell me that, I get super excited. And I tell my kids to leave the room, and I put you on speakerphone, and I put you on speakerphone, and then I mute, so I don't interrupt you by laughing so hard. Because whenever you call me, you tell me you got a good story, I'm thinking, here we go. So yeah, tell us about the hand.
So and I talked to Aaron Kendall this morning to make sure I got the details correct. So Aaron Kendall's a SEAL that was working at the training detachment when I was the command master chief there. And he is on a hunting trip out in Texas, like a foundation-supported hunting trip. And he's driving one of those side-by-sides out to where he's going to hunt.
Like side-by-side ATV?
Yeah, like
situation?
an ATV, like one of those razors, right?
Yeah.
And it rolls. And the roll bar smashes his left arm. So he makes a tourniquet out of his belt and walks like a mile back to the range house. And then they try to call Life Flight. Life Flight can't come out. It's too foggy. They get an ambulance, comes and gets him. They start driving him up towards to a hospital at San Antonio. Now, he's in the hospital. They wind up having to amputate his left hand in the hospital, in this first hospital.
Well, why is that?
Oh, because it was just completely smashed.
So it was so smashed that everything
Yeah, his forearm was just smashed.
Destroyed.
It was done. He was losing so much blood through there. And they ended up they kind of had to fight to save the amputation below his elbow because they were worried because later on in surgeries they were taking more and more. So there were a couple other team guys that were there, and other team guys flew in to help out, and they're staying at this hotel right outside the hospital where he's at.
So they take him from where he was, they take him to this hospital.
He's at this hospital, and at that hospital they have to amputate his hand. So he's bedside talking with some other SEALs, and the surgeon who amputated his hand is in there checking on him, and they ask the surgeon, "Hey, do you guys still have his hand?" And the surgeon says, "Yeah, I think so. I don't, we haven't destroyed." And they asked him, "What are you going to do with it?" And he goes, "Well, I guess they destroy it or whatever." Mm-hmm. And so Aaron asked, "Well, can I have my hand?" And the surgeon says, "I'll go check." So he goes and checks with the administrators, right? And they come back and they say, "Yeah, you have to fill out these forms, but we'll give you the hand." So they fill out the forms. They give the hand to one of the other SEALs. Actually receives the hand because Aaron now has had to move to a different hospital that's a little bit better to deal with the amputations. Mm-hmm. And they've got his hand with the intent to take it to a taxidermist. Mm-hmm. So in the meantime, they're keeping it in the freezer of the hotel. And they're taking turns spending time with Aaron. So a guy will be there at the hospital with Aaron while he's in the other hospital, and other guy's at the hotel, and they're flipping back and forth.
Which is a little testament to the way it is for team guys.
Guys are just looking out for each other.
Just take care of you. Like, you're in the hospital, someone's going to stay with you 24 hours a day. It's awesome.
Right. So one of the guys that's back at the hotel room decides that either he's got to go somewhere and he wants to put the hand in the other guy's freezer, or he's going to play a joke on one of the other guys and put the hand in his bed. And so he comes up with these different ruse to try and get the hotel staff to let him into the room, and they're not having any of it because he looks kind of shady. He's a team guy.
Yeah.
So
he's telling them, "Oh, hey, my friend left his phone in the room. Can I get in there?" And they're like, "Well, no." Or, "Hey, well, no, actually, it wasn't his phone. It was his ID, and I need to go." Like, all that stuff.
That kind of stuff.
And they're shutting him down because he looks like a criminal.
Yes. So then he leaves to go to the hospital, I guess.
But they're suspect.
They're suspect. The poor maid goes in there and finds a hand in the freezer. I have a picture of it. It's horrible. It's all gray and just ripped off right there. So
Addams Family style.
Yes. And so they, of course, call the police. The police show up and they just detain everybody. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. And then Aaron's in the hospital and all the nurses come up and they're like, "Hey, all these police are calling here. They need to talk to you, something about your hand." So he's got to get on the phone and explain to the police why his hand is in the thing. And I think they probably validated something with the doctor too, and calm him down that this wasn't some kind of murder.
Yeah.
And then they kind of settled everything. They threw everybody out of the motel. Aaron gave his hand to the taxidermist. He had a nice, what they call European mount, where the taxidermist in Texas is awesome. So they mounted the skeleton hand is in this really cool mount inside glass, all done up for him. And Aaron he had the best sense of humor about the whole thing. If you're going to get depressed, losing a limb is a pretty good way to do it, mm-hmm. And in a lot of ways he's some of the stuff you see out of guys like, Travis Mills, where it's just funny. You're not guys like that. Yeah. You're not going to bum them out. You're just going to keep them going. But hysterical.
Yeah. So then, that's obviously one of many stories. How does that translate to when you're dealing with your family? So for instance, my wife, when I had to go to college, I had to go to the University of San Diego, and so this is my first time in my adult life that I wasn't in a platoon. And so I didn't really think about it, but all of a sudden I didn't have anyone to attack verbally all day, because when you're in a SEAL platoon, it's just constant, attack and combat, verbal combat, sometimes physical combat. And so when I would come home from school, of course, there's my wife, and I'd want to have some verbal sparring matches. So I'd start hacking away at her, And finally, after 3 months, she goes, she's a Brit, she says, "Hey, I'm not a team guy, And when she said that to me, I instantly realized exactly what she was talking about, and I knew she was 100% right. I can't treat my wife as if she's a E5 in a SEAL platoon.
No, and especially like the weapons cleaning table.
Oh.
When we're all stuck there cleaning weapons is when guys would just, that's when you'd look for weaknesses in any spot in any guy and just start picking, waiting for the reaction.
Yeah. You spend so much time with people and so much time just waiting. You know, it's a hurry up and wait thing. So, what are we going to do on a 4-hour van ride?
Yep.
We're going to destroy someone, get into a fight, spill Cheetos everywhere, you know, just like total chaos and mayhem. But yeah, it's all about that. But I guess what I'm asking is, I know, you know, Iris obviously had to get, indoctrinated into the life of being, because, you know, I met my wife when I was pretty young.
Yeah.
And you were not that young.
No.
And so how'd that work out? Like,
so
the ideal wife, I don't want to say ideal, I'm going to throw that on you, poor Iris, listen to this, but the squared away, let's say that. The squared away spouse. What does that look like?
So I got to go back to, if you look at my career, and you know this because you said this to her when she was on the podcast, like she's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Oh, yeah.
Because she's completely squared away. And it's because she's so solid and independent. And so there was never, ever any aspect of me having to worry about the home front. And there's a constant, she's like very dialed in and challenges me. Like a lot of I had a lot of like pretty far right political views. And then when we sit down and have discussions and stuff, she's really opened my aperture up on that. But, you know, you look at her history where she worked on ranches where she was the only female wrangler with a whole bunch of cowboys. So she got it. She had that aspect of what it's like to be around guys. And then when I'd be messing with her like that, you know, she just, same deal as Helen. Let me know.
Just put you in check.
Basically. Yeah. And this job that we have where we're constantly going forward in harm's way, I chose my words kind of poorly on the last podcast when I was talking about her. I said that she put up with a lot of stuff that other women wouldn't, and that gives the indication that she tolerated a lot of shenanigans. Negative. The strength that she had to have to be home while I was on combat deployments and then deal with me when I came back, that strength, most women just can't deal with that kind of lifestyle and don't have that kind of...
What were the words that you used on the last podcast? She put up with a lot of shenanigans.
I said put up.
Yeah.
That was a really poor choice of words because it indicates like she was just a pushover, and she is absolutely not a pushover.
Yeah.
It's
just more. Yeah, it's more like she had the strength to contend with the hard life that it is.
Exactly.
Of being married to some guy that's going on constant deployment and isn't around a lot, and then when they're gone, by the way, they might die. They might come back horribly wounded, whatever. And you sign up for that as well.
And she's working long hours and raising 2 little kids while I'm going on 6-month deployments.
Yeah.
And then she also, like, and I stayed in contact with her pretty often. Mm-hmm. So we pretty much talked at least 3 times a week, 3 times a week on deployment. And that's the model that worked for us.
I've described it, and I forget who I described it to, as emotional independence. Like my wife has and had enough emotional independence that she was going to run the show if I'm not there. She's not freaking out, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's, if you're going to look for a good spouse, they got to be. They can't be codependent, right? Codependent is actually like a bad thing, right? I mean, that's an actual bad thing, right? Mm-hmm. Codependency. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But if you go to the other end of the spectrum, or not, maybe, I don't know, maybe there's, I guess if you go too far on that spectrum, then you get to where, hey, you're gone? I wasn't aware of that. Sorry, I'm over here doing my own thing. Mm-hmm. But you got to find a good, strong balance, probably leaning towards independent, in my opinion. You got to be leaning towards independent. Because if you're not leaning towards independent, I mean, when you don't get it sucks being here by yourself for 6 months.
It's not a true partnership if they're not equal, right? If you're kind of not equal footing and one person really needs the other one, then the partnership aspect of it is not there.
Yeah, that's something to pay attention to. Because the thing that's kind of weird is when you're young, guys get suckered into the being. It feels all empowering to have someone that's all dependent on you. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So when you're young and you got the girl and she's all dependent on you and the world revolves around you, and then when you're not there, she's falling apart and you feel, oh yeah, I'm the man. And so it's easy. I think that I've seen that happen a lot, where guys get suckered into those situations, and that's not a good situation to get.
It never works out into, because then they're like, and then she's in a situation. If it's that kind of girl, she's going to find someone else to take care of her while you're not there to take care of her. Right. And then the case with Iris is like, we're inside the same box as far as just the things that we enjoy, where we want to be in the outdoors. It's all the same thing. So, it's like I said in my retirement ceremony, when I look at the trajectory of my career, and then when Iris and I became together, I went from platoon chief to master chief, first time up every time, and just hammered it, because she was a good partner and she drove me to be better and is always driving me to be better.
It helps to have somebody that's super squared away like that. You know what that does? It forces you. Like, you're not just doing it for yourself, because it's easy. Sometimes it's easier to let yourself down, right?
Yep.
It's easier to let yourself down than to let down this person that's looking at you thinking, hey, you could do better than that. Come on. Are you serious right now?
And that's the kind of stuff that she'll say to me. She's very straightforward, and I'll just say, check, got it. And then we've gotten to the point where we can give each other pretty honest feedback without there being any resentment involved.
I've been pretty straightforward with Iris on some things. We're working on some projects together.
Yep.
And it's pretty cool for me to be able to just be real straightforward with her, Yeah. And she's like, no, tell me. Well, actually, no, how does she say it? She says, no, go ahead and tell me.
Yep.
Check. So, speaking of Afghanistan, you did the last time you were on. We breezed through Afghanistan pretty quick.
We did,
but that was actually a really pretty big deployment in terms of what you guys did there.
Yep.
And I know there were some details that you wanted to get into on some of those operations and some of the things that you brought home from those operations, lessons learned, etc. I mean, you were talking about one earlier, talking about the Ma-Deuce and bringing the Ma-Deuce. That's a good piece of gear to bring out on an operation. Yeah,
and usually you got it mounted on top of a truck. Mm-hmm. But when we did that operation as Frag 06 and Siege Engine, and we actually went into Marja, and the element that I was with was in a blocking position that was looking down a road that ran east-west, and we were the furthest east position, so we were blocking position on that direction. And where we got dropped off was really close to where we were going to stay for 4 days. So we brought a mortar in, we brought the M2 HB heavy barrel 50 cal machine gun with the big tripod for it and everything.
How'd you break that up? How many guys would carry that? God, that's a lot of weight to carry, man. You start talking about the ammunition and the weapon and the tripod.
Well, the ammunition got dropped into us, but the initial insert, we had an ATV on the helicopter, and a lot of that stuff was loaded on the ATV. Plus, we were inserted maybe 200 yards from the position. So
Okay.
everything was kicked out of the helo,
Got it.
staged. We went and cleared the building and then hauled everything over there and set it up. And we'd done all the, the imagery set up for, okay, here's what we're going to be. Here's where our firing lanes, all that stuff was pretty much set up ahead of time.
Once you guys were doing that, we started, the guys in trade that we were putting through training started doing it, started carrying them in. There was some big team guy.
Oh, he just got back from deployment. I know exactly who you're talking about.
He would carry the 50 cal like he looked like he was carrying a 60.
He did.
And it was so legit good to watch.
His nickname was Pig Nips.
His nickname was Pig Nips.
And he's a beast.
Yeah.
I know he's listening. Good on ya.
That's one of my favorite nicknames. You don't want to have some feature about you that gets noticed in the dames because everyone's going to call you by some weird name.
And the funny thing about him is he's a big guy and he's super intelligent.
Yeah.
Just a good guy everywhere you measure it. So we set this thing up in a window inside, so just the barrel was sticking out and of the compound that we were holding, aiming right down the east-west road because our biggest fear is a vehicle-borne IED coming down that road. And across that road, there was like a hedgerow, and there was a little irrigation ditch over there. And so the Taliban kept coming down that hedgerow and firing at us from the trees, and then just put that 50 on the tree line, stitch it like at shin level because that would be chest or a little bit high level for somebody in the ditch, and just send a belt all the way down and back and then push them back further. Well, at one point, some guys had come up from a different direction and they were getting really, really close in this tree line.
Bad guys,
Check. Taliban guys, and we could not traverse the gun over far enough. So we tried to shove it out the window. It wouldn't go out the window. So me and the EOD warrant officer who was with us, and then one of my E5s, who right now he's a troop SEA over at one of the SEAL teams, drugged the thing out and put it in the street and just started laying it down. So we got the 50 cals set up in the street right out in front of our compound. And for a second there, we were taking heavy fire, pretty heavy fire, PKM fire, but it was all going a little bit high, and we just kept stitching, and then they were done. Mm-hmm. They broke contact. They did not like that big gun. In fact, the next day it kind of slowed down for us because they didn't want to come. They're like, we'll find a different direction, because we were holding, basically 4 square blocks. So they started penetrating in from different directions. Then later on, 2 days later, guys pushed out to another building that was about 100 yards in front of the position, and they got into a little tick up there. So we started lighting up the area that we thought they were taking fire from, and the 50 cal was so loud that they thought that they were taking direct fire from the 50 cal when we were shooting.
From the rounds passing by them?
From the rounds passing by them were so loud and knocking dust off the wall. That's why I was saying I can't even imagine what it would be like to be in a building in, that one situation that Tony was in where someone's lighting your building up with several hundred rounds. Yeah, no,
the blue on blue situation, those guys put 150 rounds of 50 cal from, I don't know, 20 meters away. I mean, from the corner. It was a building on the corner, and they stopped in the corner and just shot. And those guys coming out of that building after we got the thing under control, I mean, I kicked open the door, I saw Tony there, and Tony looked pretty much just like normal Tony.
Yeah.
Everyone else in that building looked like they just saw death, and they actually just did see death. I mean, they're in a building, they get 150 rounds of 50 cal. The guy that was on the roof, he was telling me this like a year ago, like we were just talking about, and he goes, yeah, I got out my pistol. I 100% thought that we were going to get overrun and I was going to die if I didn't just take a round through the concrete into my head.
Right.
And, yeah.
So did they know it was blue and blue, or did they think that they were just getting hammered by it? It's just like, holy cow.
One of the many little like components of this. So that guy, the guy that was on the rooftop that I was talking to, 12 hours before, he was in another position, and he got lit up with a Dishka, a 12.7 millimeter, weapon, which is the Soviet equivalent of the 50 cal. For those of you that don't know, he got lit up with that and hit with RPGs. So he said, I remember as soon as this was all over and we got back to base, he that's another thing he told me, but he told me this way back then. He said to himself, I can't believe the guy with the Dishka found me again. he was so, and we were only, a couple days in deployment. And that same guy, so when he got lit up, he was on Camp Corregidor in an overwatch position looking for IED and placers. He's sitting there on his sniper rifle, and all of a sudden he starts taking machine gun fire, and it's a Dishka, and then he gets hit with a couple RPGs. Well, I'm inside with the company commander from one of the companies from the 1st of 506, and we were planning an operation that we were doing the next day. So we start hearing gunfire, and all of a sudden we hear RPGs, boom, boom, and I said to him, the machine gun fire starts, and he goes, oh, it sounds like we're in contact. And I go, hey, my snipers are up there. Don't worry about it. Like just Jocko the badass, right?
Yep.
And all of a sudden, boom, boom. So we hear the RPGs hit. So we go running outside, and I'm still I say, hey, don't worry. My guys got this. And right as those words are coming out of my mouth, out of the bottom of the sniper tower, because we were right next to it, out of the bottom of the sniper tower, out pours that guy, who I'm sure will be on the podcast one day. He comes pouring out of the tower. His weapon, his sniper gun had been blown, like the stock up blown off, bro, by the RPG. And he just looks like, oh my God. And I said, okay, well, maybe not. It was horrible. But so that's the guy when they're getting shot up with 50 cal.
Yeah.
He just thought, and the rest of the guys too, because everyone knew that this had happened. We briefed it. Hey, just imagine the PLO going out to this. I'm saying, hey guys, these guys have Dishka 12.7 millimeter, anti-aircraft gun out there. So be ready for some significant heavy weapons. And sure enough, that's the guy on the rooftop thinking to himself, I can't believe this guy with the Dishka found me again. Yeah.
Man.
And that was one of the big lessons learned when I got to trade at, where guys would put 50 rounds of 50 cal into a building with blanks, simulating combat. And then we'd have a trade at guy in there that would get up and shoot someone. And they'd be like, that's bullshit. That guy, that would never happen. And I'm like, oh, yes, it would happen. We had guys survive 25 millimeter chain gun from Bradley's and still stumble out of, not friendlies.
Right.
Not for me, but there was enemy that made it out of buildings that had however many rounds, a bunch of 25 millimeter chain gun rounds coming out of the building or coming into your building, and they'd still live. So you don't know what's going to happen with bullets. You just don't.
No.
It's hard to tell. And
the frustration and the blame casting that goes on in some of that training. We'll get into that later. Yeah. But man, gosh, that 50 cal is such a badass weapon.
Yeah.
Period. And then later on, we had those things mounted on our trucks, and the clearance of Mosul, guys were stopping V-bids that are completely armored with those things, just hammering on them. But then it's on a Crow's remote system, and it does a number.
That's just a beautiful thing.
It's incredible that gun was made in the early 1900s.
Yeah, for sure.
John Browning.
Yeah, that's an incredible weapon. Use the exact same weapon today.
Yep.
That's amazing. That's a feat of engineering.
Someone was asking me when I posted pictures of all the brass all over the floor of that room on Instagram. They're like, oh, did you have any jams? No, we know how to set our headspace and timing.
Yeah.
Got the gauge right there on it.
Boom. That's an awesome weapon. Now, another one, you were telling me another one about getting extracted in like a Russian, like HIP 17.
So we went into this operation in Zari Panjwai, which is a really, really hot area. And we didn't like to drive anywhere because Afghanistan's limited, it's limited roads. And so their IED threat was huge. Plus there were culverts everywhere. So they would just pack a culvert full of explosives and it could blow up like, 2 MRAPs and killed everybody. So we didn't have helicopter support for this one operation, but we were working with the DEA fast teams, and they had their own helo support, and they had these Mi-17s, which are these, Russian helicopters, which are super durable helicopters, and contracted, American pilots in them, obviously.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
And so they had this operation. They're like, hey, you guys want to go on it with us? So we're the main force on that, and it was during one of our turnover ops. It was actually the op after the when Dan lost his leg, so we did to 2. And get dropped off first thing in the morning, go in, clear 2 compounds, and we found a whole bunch of, on that, there were fields and fields of marijuana around here. And then on that operation, one of the compounds just had a whole bunch of hash. It was like huge burlap sacks of hash, and I think they said there was 200 pounds of it. They had it in the middle, they destroyed it. And so it was the typical thing that happened. Women and children left, fighters came in, and then we were in, a 360 firefight. And we're in the firefight, and over the radio, we're hearing from our aircraft overhead, they're saying, hey, there's a white van, and it's dropping fighters off around you. So this white minivan is driving off, picking up fighters, and then driving a big circle around us and dropping off fighters. So this is like an hour later.
Firefights. Blast that thing?
I did.
Okay.
So this is the story. So about an hour later, they're like, hey, the white coming over, because I'm on dual comm, so I can hear on the fires net, and that's like the other radio frequency outside of inter-squad comms. For those of you who don't understand, that is just one where the aircraft are talking and one where we're all talking, and I'm on both of them, and I can hear the aircraft saying that white van is back. And so all of a sudden, I'm looking straight north at 200 yards, and I see a white van pull into the open and stop in an alleyway. So get on the radio, where's that white van, and is it directly north our position? And the aircraft comes back, yeah, it just dropped off 2 guys and they're stopped, they're looking at you right now. Crack, crack, crack. 2 rounds, and then a 60 gunner just mows the thing down, and they're just done through. Well, firefight just kept going. Now the Mi-17s, they can't fly after dark. They didn't have some kind of certification, so they had to come in there and do a hot extract on that LZ to get us off. So there's bullets flying all over the place. We get stacked to set our breakout, so everyone's kind of broken down from their position. We still have security. They're setting up the LZ, and then my job as the senior enlisted guy on my aircraft was I run out, I'm the first guy to the aircraft, and I count guys getting on, and I'm the last guy on that aircraft. So that aircraft isn't going until I have whatever number of people getting on it. Everybody's piling on there. I got a full head count. I'm like, I got a full head count, and there's no seats for me. So I got to hop on the ramp and hook an arm through one of the guy's legs. My feet are dangling off the ramp as we take off. And then I'm shooting just half-assed from the hip because it's
just
cool.
For fun.
Just for fun.
Just for the qual.
Just for the qual, the Apocalypse Now qual at a place we were taking fire from as we took off, and then we got out of there. It was a lot of fun. I'm going to stop short of saying it's awesome because I'm not going to use that word anymore, but it was pretty dang great.
Wait, does that not merit an awesome right there? That sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was.
And no one got hurt? No one got wounded?
Not in that one. Nope. Amazing. Like you said, all these bullets are flying around, and it's just incredible because just the laws of chance.
Yeah. Well, those aircraft too, it's like those old school aircraft, like when you read about the Vietnam guys, and I'm reading a book right now, those aircraft, they were flying these they had Vietnamese pilots in these King B aircrafts. And those things, the guy came back from one op, they had 48 holes in it. Been shot 48 times. Yeah. And And this American SF guy's looking at the aircraft, and he's looking at the pilot. He's getting in like you were, and he gets in, and he's looking at this Vietnamese pilot, and the Vietnamese pilot looks cool. He's just like, Roger. And it's a great quote. The guy says something along the lines of, when I'm flying, I'm just thinking about flying. I'm not thinking about bad guys. I'm not thinking about bullets. I'm just flying my aircraft. If it's my day, it's my day. Period. End of story. But that coming in a hot extract like that, that's sketch.
And those guys, they come in super fast and super speeds on their side, and it is sketchy. It's
I was in a random Russian helicopter, a HIP, or what are you, Mi-17? I guess the NATO term is like a HIP.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I was in Africa working, and that's like, we needed to get somewhere, and the only thing they could get us was contracted helicopters. But it was contracted pilots too, and I was happy to land on that one.
Yeah, those were a pretty common sight over in there in Afghanistan. A lot of the other agencies were using those, and somebody had told me, and I don't know if this is true or not, that they were so inexpensive it wasn't worth doing the maintenance on them. So when they got to a maintenance schedule, they just destroy it and buy another one.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's true. You know, that's something I heard from some guy over at the Chow Hall who
is well informed
apparently. But those pilots were so good, and they were all probably ex-TF-160 guys that were now hired on by these other guys to do the job over there. I was incredible.
So speaking of wounded, or in that case not wounded, but you were telling me a story about. And I cut you off so you didn't tell it to me. Uh-huh. But you were telling me a story about a Taliban guy getting shot in the leg.
Yeah. So last time I was telling you the story about the operation where we'd set pop flares out because guys were able to get so close to us. And during that firefight, one of our firing positions up on a roof, they're like, hey, there was someone that had circled around kind of behind our position when we weren't taking any fire for them. They were in the process of trying to flank us. They're like, hey, there's a guy back here, and we just shot him. We killed him. So stuff calmed down, and I talked to the TU commander. I'm like, hey, I'm going to press out with these two guys, because it appeared as if it was like right around the corner, around this wall, and we're going to go see if the guy's got a radio on him or anything like that. So we push out of the compound and we loop around a wall, but it's not just one wall, it's several walls, and we get a little bit farther away. So we round the corner where the guy's supposed to be, and there's no dead guy at all, but there's a guy standing 30 yards away on a hill, and he's shooting at me. So I'm patrolling with my Scar Heavy, but I'd folded the buttstock like a dummy. And because I thought that was a cool way to patrol, and so now I'm like, oh no, I can't shoulder my Scar, so I just tried to lock it out on the sling.
Like we used to do with the MP5Ks.
Yes,
just punch it out, dude. Just punch it out.
Squeezed at him, missed him, and then it had a stovepipe and a feed jam, so I just took a knee and started to reload, and then cleared the jam real quick, started shooting him again, but he was gone. And then he turned up again when we went to do our extract the following day. We had to clear a couple buildings near where the helos were going to land, and then we found that same guy with his leg all bandaged up, because they didn't kill him, they just shot him in the leg. And then we just wound up, leaving him there.
Well,
So
was that the last time you patrolled with your Scar Heavy with the stock folded in?
Ever. And then, on another op, I learned the lesson of never taking off my body armor and helmet because it was hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happened on that one?
Oh my goodness. So we were, it was an Operation Swally Cot where we'd taken high ground above a couple of compounds that we'd cleared. And the next day, we'd gotten to the point, right, where we'd started to get a little bit complacent. And all of our engagements with the Taliban, we'd always had the upper hand against them. We'd we had air power, we had better weapons, we were trained better.
Yep.
And on this operation, we had a piece of high ground right behind the compounds that we took.
Was everyone using the ACOGs on their scars generally, or what were they using?
Guys, variety of ACOGs. The snipers actually took the scopes off their SR-25s and put them on the scar.
So everyone had scopes, and so
lots of them. And we had 300 Win Mag sniper rifles that we brought along on this.
I'm just thinking mentally from the viewpoint of where the enemy's at. Like, you're reaching out and touching them accurately way further than they can get you.
Pretty much.
Sure. Which again leans towards you thinking to yourself, we're going to kick these guys' ass every time.
Yep.
And then you did kick their ass a bunch of times.
And so then these guys start to take high ground all around our positions. And we can see a guy pushing out with a PKM onto this flat ledge of rock. He's 1,100 yards away. And we're shooting at him with a 300 Win Mag, but it's windy. And we're missing close. And he'd go back and then come back out, go back, come back out. And they were getting set up all around us, and then they just brought it. They let us go with a salvo of rocket-propelled grenades and then just steady PKM fire. And we thought they're 1,000 yards out. They really can't do that much. Oh, it's 105 degrees out, so we'll take our body armor and helmets off. And then they just laid the hammer down. Luckily for me, I happened to be right on top of my body armor and helmet because I was in the prone position, and then I just was able to snake into my body armor and get my helmet back on my head. And in this is a position where this is the first time we'd been somewhere where we couldn't fill sandbags, so we just stacked a bunch of rocks as best we could to make a fighting position. And the bullets were just steadily hammering the rocks and hammering the rocks and hammering the rocks. And I was thinking, man alive, I'm going to get shot, and I wonder if it's going to hurt, but it's definitely going to happen. The odds are there, and somehow I didn't. And then a B-1 bomber came on station and dropped a whole bunch of ordnance and laid the hammer down. But after that, and I ran out of water. We all ran out of water up on this high ground position. It was like 112, 14 degrees at 2 in the afternoon. We ran underwater, and there was no getting any water until that night when the sun went down.
Did you listen to that podcast with Ron Scherer on?
I'm sure I did.
Yeah, the SF guy, Medal of Honor recipient. But if you go watch the videos of that, yeah, like the castle that they're attacking,
that's crazy.
And it's just straight uphill. I couldn't believe that. As I was reading, I was reading a bunch of articles about the situation.
Yeah.
And then they kept talking about video, and I said, I'll check out YouTube. And I saw it, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
And the way he described it, it was just incredible.
Yeah.
He just laid it out there. He's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
Boom, boom,
He's
boom.
so understated.
Uh-huh.
He's like, well, it was a little bit of a hill.
Yeah.
And there was a pretty big building. I'm like, it was a cliff. And there was a castle on top of the cliff, bro. What a freaking awesome guy. Another thing that we were talking about, and you made, obviously, and this is leaving Afghanistan, but it's getting back early in your career, when you failed the stalking section of sniper school, and then you went back and you obviously made it through, you passed the stalking section. And you kind of touched on it when you were on last time, but I was wondering, a little bit more granularity on what you changed, that you went from failing the stalks to, all right, here's me knocking out whatever, a 10.
Yeah, and it comes down to basically doing what I'd been taught and people were telling me, is that you start the stalk, you're told to find the OP, which is 1,200 yards away, and the first thing you've got to do is figure out where that OP is. And OP is an observation point, and that's where the guys that are grading you on the stalk, who are other sniper instructors, that's where they're at. And you take this model, and I was just thinking how it applies to problem solving basically across the board, where, okay, I need to find a goal in my future here somewhere. In this case, it's the stock. And then before I start executing on moving toward that goal, going to find that OP, I need to take some time and study the terrain and see what my line of attack is going to be and how I'm going to move all the way up to where I'm going to go. And then I need to put it into action. And while I'm putting into action, I'm constantly reassessing that goal and adjusting my actions across the way. And that, when I went from that model, I went from, failing stocks to being the first one done, hardly spending any time on my belly and doing that. So then you take that and you apply it to life. And you think about just goal setting. Where do I want to be in 5 years? Mm-hmm. And identify it and then say, okay, do a little research. How do I get there? And then get on that damn path, stay disciplined, and then just keep the eye on the target and keep adjusting your aim as you go. And I can look back at times in my life where really I wasn't paying attention. I'm really just treading water, living paycheck to paycheck, doing whatever. And now, I take that model and I apply it to where do I want to be in 5 years? Where do I want my kids to be? What kind of parent do I want to be? And how am I going to get there? And what's the path I'm going to lay out for it?
Yeah, and from a leadership perspective, obviously this applies. Because from a leadership perspective, and I was just on Peter Attia's podcast, and we were talking about a little bit about that.
Strategic framework, tactical, right? I listened to that this morning.
And what I said to him, where it first started to occur to me, that was, hey, if my guys don't know what it is that we're trying to accomplish, they can't make it. They can't move. Sure, I can tell them move 8 yards forward, and then they can't hear me anymore. Now what, they're going to wait for me to get wherever they are? I can say, hey, go take that building right there. Well, now they can't hear me anymore, so now what are they going to do? They're going to sit there and wait for me to come up and tell them to do something else? No, they need to know what we're trying to get accomplished. And then they need to have the standard operating procedures down well enough and the parameters that they're allowed to maneuver within, and that allows us to actually accomplish the mission. And that's something I think I mean, I don't even know when I learned that, but without that strategic objective, and that's a strong word, okay, I get it. I get strategic. I get what it means, and I'm not talking about, global warfare, but when you're in a town and you have a mission objective that, okay, we're going to get to this building, or we're going to move to this area, or we're going to take this piece of terrain, and everybody knows that. And even when those things change, because as you know, you get into a contact or you get into a situation where you change what you're doing. You have to let everyone know that, hey, we're breaking contact, we're getting out of here, hey, we're going to Strong Point, this building, or whatever. Once everybody knows that, then they can act on it, then they can carry it out. Same thing of what you're talking about there. Now, on a bigger picture, of course, it still applies on a bigger picture. If your troops in the field don't know what it is you're trying to achieve, then they make bad decisions. If they don't know that you're trying to protect the populace, if they don't know that that's a broad strategy, then they get out there and treat the populace, they act like idiots. If they know that's what they're trying to do, then they make better. I'm not saying they make perfect decisions, because they don't, but they'll make better decisions because they understand what that broad strategy is. And it's certainly the same thing in business. And with business, it goes back and forth too, because sometimes in business, I run into it with businesses where they're, for instance, trying to go public, so they need to make money every quarter. They need to show that profitability increase. And so the biggest thing they got on their mind is trying to show a good quarter. And they'll sacrifice some strategic things, like they'll sacrifice a little bit of taking care of a customer because they want to scrape a little more money out of the situation. That's a bad strategic play, but they do it short term at the time because they know they got to make more money in the quarter so they can come back and reinvest more. So, but everybody's got to know that, because if everyone thinks, hey, the number one thing is we never let our customers down. Okay, guess what? We lost money this quarter. Now we can't go public because and again, this is a really kindergarten level examples, but that's the kind of thing where what you're talking about, if people don't understand what that longer term goal is, then they can't really operate and function on their own, which is a problem.
No, and you're not thinking long term. You're just thinking day to day, basically.
Yeah. I kind of went off at the muster on that one kid that asked me, how often are you thinking strategically and how often are you thinking tactically? And, I just kind of was going off about, look, man, every single thing I do is strategic. I'm not making any tactical moves. I'm not worried about the tactical wins and losses. Now, there's a reason for that. I'm in a good spot right now where a little tactical loss doesn't mean that much to me right now. And it's really easy for me to just focus on the strategic stuff. When I was younger, I had to focus more on some tactical things. That's the way it is. But even as a young person, you got to keep that straight. You might have to take some tactical. You might have to make some adjustments and win some short-term battles just because that's the way it is. But you should be thinking tactics all the time. You should be thinking strategy all the time. You should be thinking long game all the time. All the time thinking about the long game. All the time thinking about how does this decision affect where I'm going to be in the long term. Because the short-term decisions, those are the ones that beat you down.
Yeah,
got to play that long game.
Nested inside that long-term goal, strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually kind of appreciated that he brought that up.
Oh, totally. It was a good question. He was a younger guy, and you could see he's thinking. He probably thought to himself, "Hey, it seems like Jocko keeps talking about the long game," and he thought to himself, "How often is Jocko thinking about that?" And so he asked the question. Good on him. So I could explain. I'm thinking about it all the time. That's the way you got to do it.
And Peter Attia as well, for bringing the whole framework bringing the whole framework and everything up.
Yeah, for
on
sure.
that aspect of that, because I was listening to that this morning and I'm like, that's the same thing that makes you successful on a stock, choosing that goal and then working your way to it, doing your, and you got to watch out for the situation where you get paralysis by analysis, and that's caught up by you got a time limit on a stock. Okay, you got 3 hours to get this done, so you got to get it figured out and you got to get moving. Or I think a lot of people will fall into that trap where they do too much study.
Oh yeah.
And then they're not
you're talking
no
about
action
in life.
In life in general,
for sure.
And in stocks, guys will run out of time.
I said something the other day. Most things don't get finished because most things don't get started. And people don't even start. People don't even make that move.
Right.
Of course. Hey, guess what? Big shocker. There's a dichotomy, and that's the bottom line. There's a dichotomy. If you rush into it and you start moving without having a long-term plan, you're probably going to make a bad move. If you take too long, you're going to wait too long, and the whole world's going to pass you by.
Yep.
So you have to constantly modulate and figure out where you're at, and no one's going to be able to give you the answer. I can't sit here and be like, oh, you know what you want to do right there? You want to make this? No one's going to be sitting there telling you that day by day. You've got to figure that out. And you've got to figure out if it's really, really moving you in the right direction.
Yeah.
The way it's got to be. When you were talking about coming back to trade at, and, you and I both had the luck to be at trade at in the positions we were in. I was the trade at OIC. You were the trade at CMC. Mm-hmm. So basically we were the senior dudes. We weren't together, unfortunately. But what a good job and what a good opportunity to see how things unfold. And what a good opportunity to take these standard operating procedures and pressure test them.
Exactly. So I was hit up the other day in a brief where I was talking about when I was there as a troop SEA and we did our first FTX, and you had just changed training to where prior to that, and every time I'd been through land warfare prior to coming through as a troop senior enlisted advisor in 2008, our FTXs were all live fire. Great. Mm-hmm. Live fire is cool, but it's so canned because it has to be for safety that it really doesn't put any pressure on the leadership, and there's not really any pressure brought to bear on any of your SOPs. Yeah.
To put this simply to everyone, when you're in a gunfight, there's two horrible things that the enemy will do. They will shoot at you and they will maneuver. And when you're using live fire for training, your enemy is a bunch of paper targets. At best, they're mounted on those little carts that can move around, but they're very, very limited, not even remotely close to what a human being is going to do. So when you're going with live fire, your enemy neither shoots back at you, nor do they maneuver. So in the SEAL teams, We would destroy our paper targets all the time. We would crush them all the time, relentlessly. We would outmaneuver them because they couldn't move. We would outshoot them because they didn't shoot. So it was pretty easy to dominate. And sure, there was that level of stress of the fact that it is live fire. And when you're out like in the desert, you are, and you do, and we still do this, where you have to shift fire and you're walking and you're making sure that you're safe because you can't, you can shoot each other. But that type of stress compared to the stress of, okay, now the enemy, we're using laser tag guns or paintball, and the enemy is full on maneuvering, they're full on shooting back at us. That's a big step up. Yeah,
and so we just completely epically failed that first operation, and we took a hard look at the 4 biggest things we did wrong and identified where our standard operating procedures were flawed. And then we sat down with our leadership and we got input and started to modify those SOPs so we could build up standard operating procedures that were resilient enough to withstand all the pressure that you guys were putting on us in training. And someone asked me at a keynote I was given the other day, like, well, didn't you guys have SOPs prior to that? And we absolutely did, but they weren't good enough because they couldn't withstand the pressure, so they had to be modified. We had to modify the way we were doing SOPs for getting head counts. We had to modify how we were dealing with our down men. Like, honestly, we weren't carrying litters around. Mm-hmm. We weren't, but it's just an absolute abject disaster. If you get a wounded guy, sure, I can drag him off the X, yep. But now if I patch him up and I gotta throw him over my shoulder again, I'm gonna blow out every bandage I just put on him. That's stupid. Our radio comms going when everything is confusing, we had to fix that. So we had to dial those SOPs in, the standard operating procedures. And the beauty of TRADET is that as stuff is happening on the battlefield, we immediately modify that in the training, and we're putting that on top of the guys in training so they can see if their standard operating procedures are good to go or if they're flawed and they need to be modified, so we can constantly modify if people are honest about them. Yeah. And that's the beauty of the basically the petri dish or the lab that we had out there at TRADET, because the other thing is we could see when people were being honest about their mistakes or when guys were blame casting and not taking ownership of what was going on and not being honest with their SOPs. And then you just develop these SOPs, like they don't just apply to the battlefield. We came up with standard operating procedures for, how we did our admin stuff, how we dealt with anything that you can think of. We would think of a good way to do it and then test it and then run through it. So, you might not like this analogy, but I think that SOPs kind of are a life hack, because it is one of those things that you can lay in.
There is no hack.
I know, except for the standard operating procedure is pretty dang close to one.
Yeah. What's, as you were talking about that, one thing that I definitely noticed is you could have almost 90% of the time that you use the word modify our SOP, you could have used the word simplify, because most of the time it was someone saying, hey, we got this crazy, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this and you're going to do that. And there's all these crazy things. And they realize that doesn't work. So you make it simpler and simpler. Now, where that's counterintuitive is like in extreme ownership, where I talked about doing SSE. And when we first started doing SSE, the plan was real simple. Just smash everything and just take whatever you'd find, right? Mm-hmm. But that was a horrible plan and it didn't work. So we had to put something that was a little bit more, looked on the surface to be a little bit more complex, even though when you broke down the individual human beings and what they were doing, it was very straightforward and very simple. So no, there's no doubt that having that opportunity to watch SOPs get tested and either pass or fail, and it was so obvious either way, because it was so cool when the platoons and the task units would start to work together and they'd start to cover and move for each other and they'd start to use decentralized command. They would crush the TRADET guys. Or they would at least get the best of them. They'd at least kill them all. Whereas when they're not doing it, it would be comical. 4 trade at guys would kill 40 guys or whatever it was. And you'd just be thinking, And you're right. This is where you'd have ego problems would show up. Because guys would think, and it was so hard from my perspective, from your perspective, when you're like, listen, the trade at cadre is going to do the same. They did the same thing to the last 9 troops or the last 5 troops. They did this exact same scenario. And the other troops used simple standard operating procedures. They covered a move. They used decentralized command, and they won. Here's what you're doing. This is from my perspective, and I know it's hard, but what you're doing is you're trying to control everyone, or what you're doing is you've got these standard operating procedures that are too complicated, or you're not prioritizing and executing. You've got to follow these simple rules. And it would be hard to convey to some guys if the guys wanted to put up their ego barrier and let it offend them and think that would never happen, or no, that's just the TRADET guys knew what we were going to do. Yeah, the TRADET guys know what you're going to do. You know what? You're attacking a target area. Anyone, any military mind in the world is going to get the high ground, and then they're going to sweep through, if they can, from high ground to low ground. That's what everyone's going to do. It's not like the TRADET guys. Anybody could figure that out. Any military mind is going to look at a target and do it one of 3 ways or one of 4 ways. And 50% of those 4 ways actually is going to overlap. So you don't have to be a freaking rocket scientist or Napoleon to be able to figure out, okay, here's the target. Where do I think the SEALs are going to come in from? It's like, oh, okay, they're probably going to come in from here. I'll set up 2 guys there. There's also a chance they're going to come in from over here. Cool, I'll put 2 guys over there. There you go. You knew our plan. It's like, yeah, bro, the enemy it's like you talked about. You had situations where you went in and you're like, oh, we'll go get on the high ground. Oh, the enemy put IEDs there. Yeah, guess what? It doesn't take a rocket science to figure out, oh, if you're going to assault us here, you're probably going to want to get this piece of terrain over here. So that would offend guys, and they'd get into the, hey, this is wrong. And instead of saying, okay, what did I do wrong? Can you just tell me what I did wrong again? Because I'm not sure I understand it. Oh, well, what you did is this. You didn't prioritize and execute. You didn't use decentralized command. And they would just, if you're not going to listen to that, it's a problem. I had a guy at the muster just asking me about, like, how do you handle it when someone really picks you apart on a debrief? And I'm like, bro, you know how I handle that? What I do is I look them right in the eye and I say, thank you. Thank you for telling me that. Please, thank you, and I appreciate it. And I'm going to go look at what you just told me, and I'm going to try and figure out if I can fix it. Because otherwise, like I could see it in this guy's eyes. Like, he's asking me that question because his ego is getting offended. And everyone's ego gets offended. I get offended when somebody tells me that. When somebody gives me the 9 big debrief points on what I did wrong, I'm freaking mad. I don't want to make mistakes. I have an ego just like everyone else, if not a freaking larger ego than anyone else. And when somebody tells me I did 9 things wrong, I'm pissed. I'm pissed at myself. And it's really easy for me to look at you and get pissed at you for telling me that I screwed this up. But instead, I've gotten old enough to realize, even if I don't like you, it's even harder if I don't like you. It's even harder. When I don't like you, it's even harder, right? That's what makes it super hard. But when you go, you know what? You bite down and you go, okay, thank you. Let me assess what you just told me. If you could make that little step up in your life, it's epic. And when guys would, to your point, when guys wouldn't make that step up in coming through the TRADET training, it would be a nightmare. It was a nightmare. And the thing is, man, like, I love all these team guys. I want them to go kick ass. That's all I wanted, was them to, like, go do great things on deployment. And when you get the guy coming through that just would be offended by it, and I'd be so bummed out. I'd be so bummed out. I'd be like, bro, I just want you to do good. I'm just telling you, like, don't focus on a head count when you're in the firefight. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And then you get to the point where you're just like, oh man, you're not going to get it. Now I'm just going to make you suffer.
Yeah.
But because you'll get critique points where guys will say, hey, we need to get an op so we can go start to finish where you let us win, basically. Mm-hmm. And, you're playing football and your college team goes against a high school team. That's not challenging for anybody, and you're not going to really learn anything out of it. And
you don't learn anything.
That's why I gave you a walkthrough. And so after seeing that so many times and running land warfare, I started going out at the front day one and saying, hey guys, listen, you're going to get a walkthrough. That's your time to work through your whole script on how you're going to run a target assault. But I'm shortchanging you if I'm not putting pressure on you when we have these FTX nights, because we only have this place for a limited period of time, and this is where you're going to find where your weak points are and get better. And then knowing about myself when I have those two voices arguing in my head, the one that's my ego, and it's making an excuse for everything that someone who's debriefing me is picking apart, and the other reasonable voice, which I'm trying to turn the volume up on, that's going, oh yeah, that's a fair critique. Yeah, well, I got a little lazy there. Shouldn't have taken my body armor off. That kind of stuff. Or the worst was like the OIC that would come out after you were OIC. And he if he came out to training and he would find some stuff that was screwed up, and he's like, why am I the one fixing it? And I'm like, you are exactly right. And guys would get angry. He's like, he comes out here and he calls us out. He goes, we deserve it. Let's not do this ever again. We cannot have our boss coming out here and looking at how we're running training and calling us out. And a lot of it was, I'll give you an example. Go out to an IADS range and a platoon has decided to have their 60 gunner walk point, because that's going to work good for an immediate action drill. But that's not what you're really going to do.
Yeah.
That's patrol to contact. That's not what we're training in an immediate action drill when we're training for a sucker punch. And he's like, what in the wide world of sports is going on here? And we'd be like, yeah, but guys wouldn't want to tell the platoon. It'd be one of these small things where, I failed in this in leadership a lot of times, where it's just like, oh, I'll just let that slide. I'll just let that. And pretty soon everything's sliding and you're not really giving people any guidance. But yeah, people come, you got to be honest with the critique and look at it and then move forward. And at the end of the day, you always kind of know when you're wrong, and to take ownership of it, you feel better about it because now you have power over it, right? And then it's like, oh, if I think that the TRADET staff is cheating, now I'm powerless against it, and it's just kind of a stressor that I'm dealing. Exactly.
They're just gonna win. It doesn't matter. Blah blah.
And then it's also on a TRADET. It's difficult to debrief people and not come off as condescending. That's a real skill. And some guys are really good at that, and that's something I try to work on. And I'm not perfect at it, but to give people constructive criticism in a manner that they'll accept it. That it doesn't feel like I'm poking them in the eye.
One of the things that's hard about that in TRADET is you don't really have a good relationship with 50% of the guys that are coming through. So some guys that come through, like when you're coming through, I'm like, hey bro, like I could just like be pretty straight up with you.
Yeah.
Some guys I don't really know you, and you're from like a different team, and I never worked with you before, so I have no sort of relationship, and then it's harder, to say, hey man, that was a really bad job. Now I don't know. What I ended up doing at TRADET was I would just be like, hey, this is what happened. And by the way, I recorded you on my audio thing. Like I would carry a little voice recorder, and then when people would be panicking or freaking out, I would record them. And I'd say, you were kind of freaking out there. And they'd say, I wasn't freaking out. I'd be like, okay, listen to this. Everybody needs to get it right. I'd be like, does that sound like freaking out to you? Or is that your calm voice? So.
The other fun thing about the DITS gear was you could hit them with the near miss, because if they got killed, they would get now drugged through the desert by their ankle. Yeah. And guys didn't want to die, so they still weren't as honest about fire as they could be, but they would still like. My favorite thing to do would be put the God gun, which is just a regular thing I had as a lane grader, on near miss. And if guys were screwing around, like they would not, they'd all be standing up in a perimeter where they shouldn't be standing, and I would just near miss them all. Guys would just dive.
Yeah. It
dive
was like
into
real
walls.
rounds. It was like legitimate real rounds were coming out, and when they'd hear that near miss things, they didn't want to get drugged through the desert for freaking 2 kilometers to the extract point, have all their gear be beat up and bruised
and gone.
Punished. All their whoever has to carry you is just getting completely punished. I can't feel my face, man. I can't feel my face. Yeah. Well, how are them younger guys coming out? You know, everyone talks about the big millennials, and from what I've seen when I talk to the teams and when I've gone out to some training sites, guys are awesome.
I think across the board they are.
Yeah.
I mean, I've looked at all the new guys, and the quality of the new guys now compared to who I was.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I could have made it through training if I was
studs.
compared against all the guys now. They're smart, they're motivated, and they're hard.
Yeah.
And
they're only coming in because they want to go to war.
Because that's a given.
Yeah. Did I want to go to war? Absolutely. But it wasn't a known thing. And I got to admit that I kind of thought it was. I thought like, oh, I'm going to Nam.
Yeah, that was. I thought that for sure
too. I fully thought I was going to Nam in 1991 when I got to the team. But yeah, these guys know for a fact. I mean, they see memorial services on TV. They know what they're getting into for sure.
And the complaints about the millennials that I hear are that, oh, they want to know why they're doing something. Well, duh.
Yeah.
You know, and you just covered that in that document that was written after World War II that says, hey, guess what? You need to tell guys why they're doing something, or they're not going to be the most effective. And it's generationally, it's just more blame casting where people are whining about the next generation. Yeah. It goes back forever.
That's just normal, right?
I think it's one of those normal whiny things that you got to be.
The young guys suck.
Uh-huh.
No, they don't. You suck.
When I was at one of the leadership courses with some regular Navy leadership, and one of the Master Chiefs was telling a story that she had an E5, and she worked in supply, and she's like, hey, I need you to go do the inventory today. And she's comes back like an hour and a half later, and the guy had to go inventory this whole warehouse. And he's hanging out in the coffee lounge an hour and a half later, and she's like, hey, what the heck is going on here? He's like, I did the inventory. And she's like, no way. That takes all day. Let's spot check it. Spot check, randomly pulls up a couple items off that inventory list, checks it. She's like, how did you do this? And he's like, well, I got this app reader on my phone, and I just went and scanned all the barcodes. He used his phone and completed the inventory like that with a little bit of ingenuity. Mm-hmm. And so basically she just told him the end state and got out of his way. It was by accident, but she got out of his way and let him figure out how something to do it, and then went with it.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nope.
What about for you as you've gotten older? What kind of mindset changes have you gone through where, like I just kind of talked about one from my perspective, as I got older, I see different things. And I always try and make that perfectly clear to everyone that, I kind of, I learned. I learned, and I'm still learning. And so, what like were some things that if you could have learned or changed your mentality on earlier, like what?
Yeah, I mean, shutting down the ego. A lot of my growth, honestly, is being married to Iris and is 100% responsible for her. And
she
just
shuts down your ego.
Shuts my ego down, but then has honest conversations about, well, what are you really thinking here? And then, actually listening to what someone's saying. Because the trap I used to fall into was when someone was talking to me, I wasn't really listening to them. I was just formulating what I was going to say back to them.
Formulating your counterpunch.
Exactly. Yeah. And I probably score high in trait disagreeableness. Yeah. So, it's just my nature to want to be at that point of friction, but that also makes me just want to go stick my finger in people's eyes and offend them and stuff like that. And so stepping back and opening my mind up to other points of view, and then being a little bit more cognizant of other people and how they're reacting to me so I can adjust how I interact with them relationship-wise.
I don't know if you remember this question that the muster guy had asked. Hey, what do you do how do you deal with someone who's super negative and about, the team or whatever? And, I said, here's a really good leadership technique that you can use. It's very complicated. It's called listen. How about you listen to them? How about you actually listen to what people are saying? Somebody feels really negative about my team. Guess what? I want to know why. I want to actually hear their explanation as to why they're being super negative. And by the way, when you allow someone to voice their opinion and you listen to them carefully instead of formulating a counterpunch, which is what our instinct is to do, if instead you go, okay, well, what's wrong, Jason? What's the problem over here? I actually want to listen to you. I want to hear what you have to say. And that is such an advantage as a leader, instead of always feeling like, hey, anybody that steps to me is getting crushed. Like, no, actually, anybody that steps to me is going to teach me something, and I'm happy to hear it.
Yeah, boom. And then just being aware of, my biases. Yeah. My biases, and then I find this a lot of times with the dang media, presses the heck out of my buttons, and so I got to the point where I don't watch the news anymore. Yeah. Because the news is hard. It's there to get you angry so you'll pay attention to it and gets them better ratings. Yeah. And a lot of times when I'll see some really extreme things that they're claiming people said, when I actually take the time to dig into it, it's like not quite what it was. And now that I've become a lot more introspective, and so I'm paying attention to how things make me react. I'm paying attention to when my face flushes out or I grip, and I'm like, oh, okay, now it's time to detach and step back. I've noticed that just like, it's not a positive, thing in my life to have my blood pressure spiked again and again and again and again because I've got a 24-hour news feed coming in. Yeah. And so another team guy pointed this out to me. He's like, hey, I was talking about the news and I was all angry about something, and he's like, you know what? I quit watching the news. And he goes, I'm a lot happier since I stopped watching the news. It doesn't matter. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Of course it matters. But he planted a little seed and watered it, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to quit watching the news. Yeah. And it doesn't matter. And I was to the point where I'll just check the news like first thing in the morning to make sure a volcano went off. Right. Now I don't even do that. Yeah. If there's a volcano going off, I'll see the smoke or someone will tell me.
Yeah, you're going to find out about it. The 24-hour news cycle is filled with a lot of things that you don't need to know. You don't need to know at all. And that's kind of the way I am. I mean, I still look at it, but it doesn't. I'm completely. I can look at 19 headlines in a row, and none of them have any remote impact on my mentality at all. Until I see one that says, oh, there was a terror bombing here. And I go, oh, okay, let's see what's going on. Or, hey, there was a U.S. serviceman killed here. And I'm like, oh, okay. But every other of the 17 headlines that I read that were, I'm trying to think of a good one right now because there's just, everything is going down. And you're like, oh, okay, fine. Yeah, no, everything's not going down. The world isn't going to end.
But it's clickbait, isn't it?
Yeah, it is
clickbait. You guys are the first ones I heard use that word. I'm like, oh, that's what that is.
Oh, yeah.
This is exactly what it's going on, clickbait, but it's just clickbait on the TV to get you to dial in and get them higher ratings. Yeah. And
then you got to listen to that Sam Harris, and I forget the female's name that was on, but she did this whole research about it, talking about how the Russian bots and all that stuff. And yeah, you can create headlines that are going to make people click, and then you can make fictional random. You can just make up stories.
I know.
And they'll catch. Someone else will report that story as being true. It's a crazy world.
The Onion is that joke newspaper, and they've gotten the AP has picked their stuff up like 2 or 3 times before.
Totally nuts. So you got to learn. You should definitely, at a minimum, learn to detach when you read the news.
Yeah, and then something that I found real helpful is putting a filter on my thoughts. So, and this is something that Iris has kind of talked about. She's like, the first filter is, am I whining? And then the second filter is, am I resentful? And then the third filter is, am I jealous? And if I can just catch that stuff, once I identify it, it doesn't bother me anymore.
Yeah.
But prior to identifying it, if I'm just like, oh, so-and-so just got a promotion, oh, that's bullshit. And then I realize, oh, wait a minute, I should be happy for him for getting that promotion. And Jordan Peterson says something about be careful who you share good news with. Mm-hmm. And I just don't, that's not something I'm proud of when I see it come up in myself. And it's one of the things that as I age, I'm trying to fix. The other thing that as I've gotten older is I used to be very group identified. Mm-hmm. And now I find myself becoming more of an individual, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense.
And
yeah, I understand what you're saying.
That's where I'm trying to go, and this is the path that I'm on, and it's a struggle, and it all comes down. And I kind of wish there was two words for ego, right? Because the ego, if I didn't have an ego driving me to be better, I would just be sitting at home eating chocolate chip cookies on the couch. Right.
There's not two words to describe ego, but there is the dichotomy of ego.
There is.
And so then you're good to go.
Yeah.
One of my team guy buddies a long time ago used this phrase, which I always remembered because I thought it was really good. Basically, someone was whining about something, and raised their hand and said, well, why are we doing this? And then afterwards, my buddy goes, hey, that's cool. Put yourself on report for being a bitch. And so, I've been hypersensitive to that for a real long time. I do not ever, I don't care what I'm going through. I will not complain about anything. I am hypersensitive about that. At least I try to be. I mean,
yep.
Cold, I'm not gonna say anything. Hurt. I hurt my knee, mm-hmm. and my knee was all swollen up, all jacked up, and I didn't tell anyone. I told, hey, I injured my knee, no factor. And finally, Leif was like, hey, what's up with your knee? I sent him a picture, and the knee is just twice as big as the other one. He's like, oh my God, are you gonna need surgery? I'm like, no factor. And I only sent it to him 6 or 7 days. The swelling had gone down. But out of the gate, I wasn't going to say anything because I don't want to sit there and complain. Bro, I hurt my knee doing jiu-jitsu. Oh no, you know what I mean? Come on, bro. I'm not going to complain about that. But yeah, those other things about being resentful and being jealous. Whenever I feel that tinge of jealousy, when I feel like mad at someone for doing something, I automatically know it's me. And I've known that for years. There was a Stoner, as a matter of fact, he wanted to go to Princeton. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, we weren't together at Team 3 anymore. And so he was talking to some people. And finally he comes to me and he says, hey man, I want to go to Princeton. I want to put together this package and go to Princeton. He said, but some of the other people I'm talking to are telling me it'd be bad for my career. And I'm like, bro, those guys are just jealous. That's not happening. I go, you go and you get your freaking degree from Princeton. Are you kidding me? How is that going to be bad for? And he did. He ended up doing it, and he got in. He got accepted. But that was one of those things where it was so obvious to me. Whoever told you that is just telling you that because they don't want you to have another punk card to pull on you. Because hey, you're Stoner. You got a bunch of combat experience. You got a bunch of combat awards. You're this big strapping dude. And by the way, you're going to go to Princeton. No one wanted that final punk card to be issued to Stoner.
It's hard when you see someone else that's successful and that I should be getting up off my ass and getting into Princeton myself, or going and you can't control whether or not you're deployed to combat, but a lot of the other stuff is, and I think that's where it gets painful for guys. It's okay, well, I'm not going to make the effort, so I don't want anybody else to make the effort either. I'm a crab in this bucket, and I'm going to drag that crab that's trying to climb out back in the bucket.
And this is actually in Way the Warrior Kid 3. This is why I had to address this, which in Way the Warrior Kid 3, Have you read it yet?
Not yet.
So in Way of the Warrior Kid, there's a new character that comes. His name is Danny Reinhardt, and he's like good at everything. He's better at Mark than at everything. He's like a little bit smarter, does better on the tests in school, and he's a little bit faster, and he can do more pull-ups. And then like to take the cake, because he's a new kid, moves in, and Mark still thinks he's got the ultimate punk card to pull, which is, I do jujitsu and I can choke you, so none of the other stuff matters. It turns out Danny Reinhardt's been training for 2 more years. And that's exactly what happens, is Mark, instead of saying, wow, I can learn from you. Wow, you can help me. Wow, that's awesome. I know you worked hard for that. Instead, he just tries to undermine, and he just is jealous. And so that's something that you deal with when you're starting to be, even as a little kid, you know?
Yep.
As even a little kid, you can be jealous. So checking to check yourself if you're being resentful, if you're jealous of someone, those are like the first things I check when I start getting mad at someone. Those are the first things I check when I start getting mad at someone. I go, am I being jealous right now? Yes, I am.
Hit
yes,
that filter.
Yep. That is not good.
And what's worked out really well for me is when you identify these people that are good at everything, keep them around you.
Oh, for sure. For sure. For sure. And that's the other clincher in the Way of the Warrior Kid 3 is Danny Reinhardt. He's not only like better, he's also like a really nice kid.
Yeah.
And so that makes Mark even madder because everyone wants to be friends with him, you know, just because he's nice. So, yeah, you got to watch out for that. Check yourself. Don't get that. I wanted to talk about some leadership mistakes that you've made. And I was thinking to myself, well, I could call out Jason for leadership mistakes that he's made. But that's kind of jacked up if I don't talk about any leadership mistakes that I've made. Now, of course, I've listed a bunch of leadership mistakes that I've made in Dichotomy of Leadership and in Extreme Ownership. So there's that, but I got a couple that I thought of. And I was trying to think of some broad ones. One of them is when I was in Ramadi. I hate to start off like that. When I was in Ramadi, I did not do as good a job as I should have, and I'll go a little bit further, to keeping the rest of our community informed as to what was happening and why it was happening. And to be honest with you, the reason I say I'll go further than I just didn't keep them informed, I wasn't even thinking about it. When I got home and one of our good friends said to me, and he was all fired up, and he's like, we were reading your AARs at quarters every day. Like, so every day at trade at the time while we were in Ramadi, they were reading the AARs, the after action report for hey, they killed 9 guys, they killed 7 guys. And I was like, hey, that's awesome, that's cool. I didn't really even think of that. But what I also didn't think of was guys that were saying, hey, wait a second, what are these guys doing over there? Hey, wait a second, why are you conducting operations during the daytime? Hey, wait a second, why are you staying out after you get contacted? Why are you staying in position? Hey, wait a second, why are you working alongside the conventional forces? Why aren't you doing stuff with just special operations? And I did a bad job of explaining these things to our community as a whole. And even when we got back, I had the opportunity to do it. And I spread the word to some people and was able to explain to them. But by then, some people had already thought, oh, well, these guys were just over there doing these rogue operations by themselves, and they shouldn't have been doing it. So that's one big one that I wish I would have done a better job, and I just wasn't even paying attention. And you know what it's like, man. I mean, this is my excuse. It's my fault because I was over there and I'm thinking like, hey, we got an operation tomorrow. I got 2 elements going out in the field. I'm not worried about what they're thinking. Like, I just didn't even think of it, and I should have. So I don't know if that's an excuse. It's the reason why I didn't think of it the way I should have, and I was wrong for not doing that.
How much bandwidth could you have expended on it, though, in the moment?
You know what? If I would have been a little bit smarter and a little bit better, I could have taken 15 minutes to send out an email and say, hey, everyone, want to let you know what this op was really like. Because they're reading the op sums, right? The op sum is an official document. If I could have supplemented that with, hey, guys, Jocko here. I know this one sounds a little bit crazy. Here's what's going on. The Iraqi soldiers that we're working with, they don't have night vision. They have 1 flashlight per fire team. To go out at night with these guys is completely, it doesn't work. And so we got to go out in the daytime with them sometimes. And so that's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. You know, I could have done it. I could have expended a little bit, and I just didn't have the awareness that I should have had to explain these things. Also to explain them in plain English. Because it's one thing to read the op sum. That's an official document that's written a certain way. It's another thing to say, hey guys, Jocko here. Here's what's going on. And because, I mean, let's face it, at that time I'd been in for a long time, and I had friends everywhere. I mean, and when my friends would reach out to me, this is probably should have been my best indicator. Some of my friends that reached out to me and said like, hey dude, what's going on? Like, I heard you just got a guy, I heard one of you guys got shot. What's going on? How's that happening? And I had one specific friend of mine who wrote me like a long email, and I wrote him back, right? And said, hey man, this is what's going on. But that should have been an indicator. If one of my friends was reaching out to me and saying, hey, what's going on? I should have been more cognizant of the fact that people beyond and people that didn't know me at all, you know, would be thinking, what, you know, well, this guy's hyper aggressive and they're just out there taking too many risks. It's like, no. And what was cool was there were some guys that were in Ramadi, other SEALs that were in Ramadi or working in and around Ramadi at the time who I knew, and they were like, oh, you guys are crushing it. You guys are doing great. This is awesome. Yeah. But I didn't do a good job. So that's one thing. I don't know what it looked like from your perspective. Where were you when I was over there? In
Paycom, poolside at Thailand, explaining to my guys why we had to put the missions first.
Yeah, check. Yeah.
But at the time, I was excited for you guys because it was like that was like the first sustained heavy combat of that war.
Yeah.
Everything had been, we were talking about the big news to stand around and talk about when you were at the bar was maybe a tick or a firefight that lasted 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And you guys were troops in contact 100% of the time every time you walked outside the gate.
Yeah, it wasn't quite that, but it was a lot. Yeah, and that's for sure. And that's what I think. I think I should have explained that better than I did throughout the community. And you know, I still talk to guys. I still have the opportunity when some guys that I'll still explain this to some guy that I haven't seen, because you know how it is. You'll run into a guy that you haven't seen in 15 years. And they'll be like, dude, what were you doing over there? I was like, hey, let me explain it to you. I've had people sit through kind of the Ramadi brief and be like, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, that makes sense. Or, hey, Roger. But yeah, should have done a better job of that from a leadership perspective. I was trying to think of a tactical example of, and this is a real easy story. One time I personally chased down some dude over like multiple rooftops in Baghdad, you know, like just got in the one-man pursuit. Well, I had another guy like trailing me, but basically we're hitting a target. There's a squirter. I'm outside the building as it's happening, and all of a sudden, you know, the overhead asset reports that there's a squirter, and he jumped to another rooftop. And I had a radio man. The radio man was like near me, and we both know the radio man. And he's like, hey, he went to the next roof. And I was like, got him. And so I climb up a palm tree. Like in between a palm tree and like the garage, and I get to the roof, and he's like, you jump to the next one. And so the JTAC is in the street with me, following down and telling me what's going on. And basically I left I shouldn't have done that. You know, I should have sent a couple guys, and eventually I got someone else with me, and then we got the guy. But, you know, I just was trying to think of, hey, where did I make some mistakes that were more on a tactical level? And that's one right there is, you know, I'm in charge of the assault. And if I'm out there chasing a guy from rooftop to rooftop, I'm not doing my job. But they did have it on video. And it was pretty awesome to watch. And I tried to get a hold of it, but of course it's classified, so I couldn't have it. But yeah, it was pretty cool to watch, you know, doing like parkour in kit.
Climbing palm trees.
Yeah, climb the palm tree and then jump from roof to roof to roof. And then eventually they're like, hey, isn't that one right there? And so that was one. And then the last thing, again, I was trying to think of like a variety of different mistakes. And here's something from a leadership perspective that I really, when I look back, I wish I would have done a better job. And that's helping guys with their finances, young guys. I mean, how many young guys re-enlist, they get a $150,000 re-enlistment bonus, and they show up at work 2 days later, they've got a new Ford 350 Super Duty Harley Davidson version, and they have, you know, they have a $62,000 truck that is now worth. They just had it for a day, and they've now worth $48,000. So they already lost money. And guys that would rent instead of buy, you know, just all those things where, and I wasn't like super at it, but I was ahead, and I should have been telling guys like, hey man, let me talk to you. Like, hey guys, let's talk for half an hour about where you're at right now. Let's come up with a strategic objective of where you're going to be in 5 years. You know, do you still want to be renting an apartment in IB? Because that's probably not great. Or do you want to be buying a place? Get with one of your buddies. So I never talked about that kind of stuff. And again, what it boils down to is my own being obsessed. Like, I didn't care about that stuff. You know what I mean? I guess I cared about it enough to do it, and I got lucky. I had an officer one time that said, I bought a house every 3 years and kept it. He just said that to me. And I was like, that seems like a really good idea. And that's what I tried to do. But I didn't pass that word on, and I could have probably helped out more guys. So kind of a bummer on that one.
Yeah, because that aspect, I completely dropped the ball on that early in my career as well. And later on, I got a little bit better at it, but you know, because I did 30. But I could tell a guy how to be a good shooter.
Yeah.
But then I didn't look at the whole rest of the dang pie chart and realize that if I fixed all that other stuff,
they'd be an even better shooter.
Exponentially better, right? And yeah, that was something that actually helping guys, and there was stuff that this is something I really failed at, is like I could see guys messing up, but I didn't want to have that uncomfortable conversation with them to like, bro, you gotta kind of fix this. Like, hey, you know, you've used the analogy before. If I have a booger hanging out, I want somebody to tell me. Yeah. And so I
then you get mad at them. What are you talking about? I wanted that booger there. No, I definitely wouldn't. I had some of those conversations for sure, and I'm sure you did too. Like, hey, bro, this girl, she's not the one. I'm going to tell you that right now. This isn't going to work out well for you. The problem is getting somebody to listen to that conversation is real hard when it comes to the ladies.
Yeah, and that aspect, it just most times it blows up in your face, and then sometimes you're just like, hey, I realize that maybe I'm going to lose my friendship with you. True. But I got to tell you this. And later on in my career, when I started to start like struggling with anger issues that were probably a result of my combat deployments, and started to go sit down with a psych, and I would see.
You know, you were super angry even before. Like
I was like probably pretty predisposed to it all, and it just turned it up to 11, right? And then I would see myself and other guys, and I would tell them, hey man, here's the deal. Here's the psych's number. I want you just to give him a call, and you don't have to see him after that, but do me this favor. And some guys it would help, and other guys, like I made the effort, and they'll come to that conclusion at some point. But it's like, you know, we got to look out for each other and do the best we can. And that was something that I, you know, missed out on. I think I probably would have made an awesome platoon chief about the time I was an ops master chief, 2 echelons above it, and really realized what that job was. Because as a platoon chief, one of the things that I missed out on was that the guys are always looking at me to set the example. And so it was one thing during working hours I could set an example, but if I'm a buffoon out drinking too hard, they're like, you're an idiot. Or
they follow your example.
They'll follow my example and think that this is acceptable behavior. If I'm gonna badmouth my leadership, which is, I'm embarrassed to say it, but it's the stuff that if I didn't really have my aperture open on the big picture and would complain about the command, and then I complain in front of the guys, just screwing them over. And I did, because they're like, well, he's whining. Now I'm gonna go ahead and whine. I had issues where, like, personally, I didn't like the person that I was working directly for. And that tainted my interaction with that person. I didn't have any relationship with them, and then my whole platoon would suffer because I had a bad relationship with the next guy up just because I didn't like him, which is complete weak sauce.
Oh, yeah. I was having a conversation with Dave Burke.
Good deal, Dave.
Yeah. And it was, he just quoted me yesterday. I was hanging out with him, and the quote was, like, whatever, 6 months ago we were having a conversation, and I said something like, hey, Dave, whether I love you or hate you, you won't know either way. and he was like, he's like, well, it kind of freaks me out. He goes, because you're super nice to me, and now I'm thinking you could just hate me and don't care. And, you know, we laughed about it. But that's exactly right, and that is the truth. Like, the guys that I hated never knew it. I mean, to this day, they don't know it. And so, I mean, you and I were having a conversation about a couple of people that I obviously don't like at all. They don't know that.
Yeah.
So you've got to be professional at all times. And it's a very small number of people. Most people are pretty cool to me, you know, and most people support what I'm trying to get done. So I'm pretty lucky in that way. But yeah, if you let that out, that's bad.
Is there ever really a reason not to be polite?
Yeah, very seldom. Yeah.
You could politely punch someone in the face, but
and here's where people freak out. Here's where people get all like, oh, well, you know, that's what you're talking about, Jocko. You're a kiss ass. It's like, actually, let me tell you what I actually want to do. What I actually want to do is I want to win. What I actually want to do is I want to have my platoon able to get the support that they need. What I actually want to do is I want to be able to have my platoon get the support that they need so that we can actually do a better job doing our mission. That's what I'm doing. What I care about is my guys and my mission. That's what I actually care about. And if I've got to be polite to someone to make that happen, if I've got to overlook the fact that someone might not be the personality type that I particularly like, I don't care. I don't care. Guess what? I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to accept it. I'm going to absorb whatever kind of crap that they want to throw, and I'm going to deal with it. It's fine. Now, do you get into situations where you actually have a bad boss that you have to show? Let's face it, if I'm treating you like a piece of shit and you, or I'm making really bad decisions and all you do is support me and you're a yes man, well, your guys are going to lose respect for you. So there's times where you have to say, hey, listen guys, here's what's going on. I don't agree with everything that the boss says, but you know what? He's the boss right now. And what we're going to do is try the easiest way, the way for me to get him to make better decisions is if he trusts me. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to kick ass. And so suck it up, quit complaining. We're going to do a great job, and I'm going to get a better relationship over him where he will start listening to me and we'll move forward. And by the way, unless we're going to have a mutiny, which we're not going to have, this is the best option. The other option is me to have an antagonistic relationship with the boss, in which case all he's going to do is screw us over. So how do you guys want to play this? You know what I mean? So sometimes you got to be transparent about that stuff, and that's fine too. I mean, I've been in situations where I've had to do that, where it's like, okay, hey guys, here's what's going on. I know this seems a little bit crazy. I know that the boss may seem like he's making a rash decision on this. Here's what we're going to do. Let's explain his perspective. Here's what the boss is seeing. He doesn't want this to happen again. He's tightening the noose. He's tightening the leash way more than I want him to. But guess what? Let's show him that he can let loose on the leash again. Let's get in line. You know, so you got to have those conversations sometimes. But broadly, I'm going to get along with everybody. Why not? I want to do my mission. I want to take care of my guys. The best way to do that is if I have good relationships up and down the chain of command. Boom.
Question.
What?
So in your,
no, I don't like you.
In your
even in secret.
In your
the secret is out.
Yeah, I kind of got that. Either way, in your view, what's the difference between that? How you say like you get along, like even if you really don't like someone, they won't ever know. Mm-hmm. In your view, what's the difference between that and being like a what do you call like a two-face or a like let's say they say two-faced person or whatever.
Well, one big thing is I'm not getting along with them so that I can better my own life. I'm not doing it so I can take care of me.
Yeah.
Because I don't really care about me. I'm doing it so I can do my job well, so I can take care of my platoon, so I can take care of my team, so I can accomplish my mission. Yeah. That's number one. If I'm doing it so I can get the promotion, I'm actually the guy that I don't like. The guy that's like, oh, I'm doing this so I can get promoted. No, I'm not doing that. And that's another thing. The troops see through that every single time.
Everybody does.
They have a name for it in the teams. That guy's a ticket puncher. They're trying to get their ticket punch. Oh, he's just trying to get his ticket punch. He's trying to grab a hold of that person's coattails and ride him up, ride him up to the next rank. It's like, no, everyone sees through that. Yeah. If you're doing the right things for the right reasons, people are like, hey, you know what? Jocko, how many times have people like, dude, you're a patient guy. Leif Babin told me that. Hey, you're so patient. I don't see how you do it. I don't see how you do it. This is when he was younger. Like, bro, how do you deal with that? I care about our task unit. I will make this happen. I can absorb some impacts. No factor. Bring it.
I remember when I was working at the club, there was a guy who I thought was two-faced. And when I listened to you, like how you're like, oh yeah, because you said that before, that you like, if you didn't like someone, they probably wouldn't know. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense, because it helps the relationship, helps morale, like helps all these things, right? And then so I think, oh yeah, a two-faced guy. There was a distinct difference, and one of the main things on top of what you said, because what you said was like I think a way more thorough, ultimately view, minus a little bit more, how should I say,
straightforward,
ground level, I guess.
Can I guess what you're going to say?
Sure, you can.
Well, because the other answer I was going to give is, I'm not acting differently in one situation. I don't go, hey, boss, yes, I got it, and then go back to the platoon and go, he's an idiot. Yep. No. I don't do that. I go, hey, boss, you know what? And even if it was a situation where I was saying, like, I might go back and tell the guys, like, hey, guys, this is what's going on. I would tell the boss. I wouldn't say, boss, that sounds like the greatest plan ever.
Yeah.
No, I'd say, hey, boss, I don't think I'm 100% on board with this. I see some other ways we could get this done. If this is what you're telling me you want me to do, I'm going to make it happen. But I think we could, so I don't act differently.
Yeah.
I'm not a different person in front of, I was doing an event the other day, and I was like talking to a company, and I was backstage talking to the CEO, and we were just, and all of a sudden, there's like, he's like, hey, it's only another half an hour before you go on. Do you need some time? Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, I don't need any time, because the person that's going to walk out on that stage is me, and I'm not acting any different way. It's just me. I'm going to, I don't need to get into character. Yeah. I'm in character. I'm walking around. This is me. Yeah. And he was like, oh, that's awesome. So same thing. When I'm dealing with the boss that I don't like or whatever, I don't show that to anybody.
Yeah.
I don't act differently.
Yeah. But you're also, you're managing what hills are worth dying on.
For sure.
When you go to your boss, so that you built up that equity with them.
No doubt about it.
That when you need it, you can cash it in, and that's why you have to establish those relationships with them. And that's what I really failed as a young leader before my aperture started to get opened up, before I got introspective and I started thinking about all this stuff from a big picture. And then my little ego was in the way.
Yeah.
And if you're not the guy that is bitching every time when you do bring something up in a respectful manner, then they're going to at least consider what you have to say, and 9 times out of 10 they're actually going to go with it.
Oh, they're going to go with it. Yeah. That's the extreme ownership story.
Yep.
And it was me sitting around with your task unit commander, the other task unit commanders from all the different teams, and everyone's, say they got this problem, that problem, the other problem, and the Commodore at the time, who was a friend of mine, says, hey, Jocko, what do you need? And I was like, hey, sir, we don't need anything. We're good to go. And for whatever reason, I was like the last guy to go. So it had even more impact, because everyone was complaining about this thing and the other thing.
Absolutely.
And he goes, Jocko, they gave it even more impact, because he's just like, he knows me. He goes, Jocko, what do you need? And I'm like, nothing, sir. We're good to go. And you can see, 4 months later, when I go in there and I say, hey, sir, we need X, he goes, cool. Go to supply. I'm calling him right now. Boom, taken care of. That's how it should be. Another thing that I was thinking about when you were talking, somebody asked me at some point, at what point did you start sort of like looking at yourself? Kind of what you're talking about. At what point did I start to look at myself from an external position and say, from a detached perspective, and say, wait, are you being jealous? Are you being resentful? Are you complaining? I can tell you right now that when I stepped into a leadership position, what I knew was that, as you said, every guy in my platoon is looking at me. And I looked at myself the same way. Because as a young enlisted guy, because my first leadership inside of a platoon was as an assistant platoon commander, I was an ensign. Mm-hmm. And so, sure, I was a little bit, when I was an E5, I was a 3 platoon E5. And are you in a leadership position? A little bit, sure, but not really. A little bit. When I was a platoon ensign, I was thinking the whole time, these guys are looking at me just like I used to look at my officer. So if I complain that it's cold, or I complain that it's, because when my officers used to do that, dude, this sucks. Oh, really? I'd be like, I would get furious. And that's why when I really started looking at myself. And I'll quite frankly, when I started putting in an officer package as a young enlisted guy, and I was like, wait a second, I want these guys to think that I actually should be in charge. I need to tighten it up. They're looking at me right now thinking, why does Jocko think he should be an officer? Here's why. I need to act like I actually deserve this. So that was a real precursor to me looking at myself from the outside saying, man, I know what it's like to be an E5 in a platoon looking at the officer going, oh, you forgot that piece of gear, did you? And you're in charge of me? You're making more money than me? You're making the decisions tonight on this operation? You didn't bring your handset? Really? That's where we're at? I know what that felt like, and so I held myself to a high standard because I didn't want somebody to be looking at me thinking, Jocko's complaining. He's weak. He forgot a piece of gear. He didn't show up on time. You know how many times I was late when I was in the U.S. Navy for 20 years? 0 times late. 0. Never. Why? Paranoia. High level of paranoia. Don't want to have guys. When my officers were late, I'd look at them and think, oh, you can't even show up on time. You're in charge of me? That's a young, arrogant kid for sure. Absolutely. Yep. That's me. But I ate that and I held on to it. And that's one of the first things that made me, and at some point it turned from this kind of hostility into like, you need to be a better person, If you're going to be in charge, it went from like this attitude that I'm kind of portraying right now of like, oh, you suck, into like, hey, you need to do a better job. You need to hold yourself to a high standard. You need to be a better person. If you're going to be in charge of these guys, you need to hold the line and you need to elevate that line. So that definitely had a big impact on me. And bro, if anybody knows this, you do. You knew me when I was E4, 20 years old, maniac, right?
Yeah.
And then you ran into me however many years later, and you're like, oh, he seems a little bit different, Not totally different, but because even when I was a young kid, I was fired up.
Oh yeah.
But I had to elevate some.
Yeah, that introspection is something that I didn't figure out till way later. But I'm sure glad I'm dead because I think it paid off.
That's one of the things, and it's one of those things that, did your dad ever give you any advice?
Yeah. So
did mine. You know how much I listened to?
This is about the same amount as I listen to my dad.
It's one of those things where you just, there's some things that you have that you, it's like you can't be taught. It's like someone can't tell you this. For some reason, there's some things that people can't tell you unless you can just completely open your mind and get humble and put your ego in check, which is really hard to do when you're 22, 23, 24. Like there's things that I look at and I go, oh, you know what? I've heard that before. I learned that lesson. I got told that lesson, but I didn't learn it.
But you can pick it up pretty dang quick by example. And so, how often do you get people asking you, well, how do I get that guy over there to take extreme ownership?
Yeah.
It's like, you do it.
Yeah, that's true.
You take extreme ownership and it will be contagious.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in that manner, when people see those modeled behaviors, then it just goes out. And it goes back to that thing that Leif talks about. There's no bad teams, there's bad leaders. And I've seen groups, SEAL platoons and SEAL troops that have raw talent in them.
Oh, for sure.
And then they'll have kind of a guy come in that's a tyrant and an egomaniac, and that will permeate into everybody. The same way as, you know, the one OIC that you're talking about that I've worked around, everywhere that guy goes, he lifts everybody else. Everyone that's around him becomes better by his example.
Yep. Any other mistakes or major mistakes?
You know, it just back to being when I was the troop senior enlisted advisor over in Afghanistan, and we were doing the remain over day operations, and there were a lot of my younger guys that didn't understand why we weren't just going in, hitting a target, and coming out during the same cycle of darkness. They felt like that would be more effective. And instead of sitting down with them and explaining to them why we were doing what we were doing, I would just tell them, shut up and get out there. And, you know, hindsight, not the right thing to do, because then they really don't know why they're doing what they're doing, and then there's resentment that's building, and then they're just not going to be the most effective at what they've got going on.
Yep. Man, I wish we could do this whole job over again.
We kind of can, though. I mean, it goes back to the resentment thing, and another bad R word is that regret.
Yeah.
I've learned, like, all these dang mistakes I've made and every big setback that I've experienced in my life, I feel like it's kind of set me up for success moving forward. So it's kind of like a glacier. You know, every time I've taken like a foot back, I then move forward 3 feet.
Yeah,
learn from it and press on.
What's interesting for me is, as I look back at my career now, and I was actually doing this when I was thinking about mistakes, man, and I was actually talking to Dave Burke.
The deal, Dave?
Yeah. And like the things that I talk about all the time now, I did those things. Like when I was a platoon commander, I was doing this stuff. I wasn't as crystallized, but like when I was a task unit commander, boom, this is what I was doing. This is what I was doing. It wasn't like I had it crystallized. It wasn't like I had this like, oh, this is what I had seen enough, and most of it I'd seen, as you just said, through modeling from some good officers and from some bad officers, and some good chiefs and some bad chiefs, where I'd say, oh, that's what hey, why does that guy do that? He always tells me what's going on. Okay, cool, I'm gonna always do that. You know, like that kind of thing. But like you said, when you get done with a job, you look at it and you're like, man, let me just do that one more time, because I will knock this thing out of the park.
So when is the moment, do you think, for you that the collective light bulb went off and you kind of put a lot of this together?
The collective,
that, you know, the first FTXs at Tradet when you got there, and
that was part of it. Like my assistant platoon commander in my OIC, I was telling him this stuff, you know. I was like, hey man, here's what's going on. Like, hey, we need to do this. Hey, when you go in and brief this guy, you need to be like this stuff. I was doing it, but then the next deployment, it was like when I was working with Leif and Seth. You know, it was me saying, hey man, come here. And you know, those guys would whip out the freaking, the wheel books, you know? Like after they realized what was going on, which was like 3 days into our task unit, and I'd be like, hey, check this out. And boom, they'd get out and they'd write down like, okay, this is what, okay, got it. Yes, that makes sense. But as far as actually taking it and crystallizing, yeah, it was absolutely the first FTX I went on with Tradet, and watched the task unit out there just fall apart, and all I was doing was sitting there thinking, if this was my task unit, number one, here's what I'd be doing, and number two, when I got back, I'd be telling the platoon commander this, and this. I'd be telling those guys, hey, this is where you screwed up, and I just was watching it and go, okay. I basically condensed everything that I had told my guys and said, okay, here's what you guys need to do, and that was cover, move, simple, prioritize, and execute, and decentralized command. The answers to all problems.
boiled down to 4 things, and they all kind of overlap too.
Yeah, they definitely are intertwined and they overlap, and you do have to throw extreme ownership on there only because if you don't take ownership of the problems, then they're not going to get solved, and that is going to hurt you. So, yeah.
At the muster, JP was saying some stuff that really stuck with me, and he said it out at the PT, and he's like, "Hey, everybody, we get to be here. This is an opportunity that you have to be here."
Yep.
And he said that, and I thought, man, that is just an awesome perspective to have. I called him up yesterday. I'm like, hey, I want to talk about this, and just fill me on what your mindset is. And he goes, yeah. He goes, because when he was at Bud's, the way he looked at a 4-mile timed run, which I hated 4-mile timed runs. I would throw up every 4-mile timed run. His attitude was, I get to do this 4-mile timed run. So if you take that and you start applying that to everything, heck yeah. You just there's no room to bitch about a damn thing. I moved through the airport today and I see a guy with no legs. And I'm like, man, my life is so good. Both my legs work. And I shouldn't have a complaint in the world.
Yeah. One of the last thing, and we're getting kind of like getting pretty long here, but one of the things I wanted you to talk about, and I know this isn't really, I guess it is, because as a leader of your family, I know that we have to lead our family, right? And one of you posted something the other day that was legit. I think it was called "A Promise to My Daughter," and I just asked if you could bring it in, because I think if you don't mind reading that to everyone, I think it's a pretty cool setup of how to take ownership of your family and what you as a leader and as a dad and as a father and as a husband, what you are putting forth as your goal, as your objective, as your strategy with your daughter. And I thought it was pretty awesome. So if you wouldn't mind reading that, that'd be cool.
Absolutely. A promise to my daughter. I will love you always, unconditionally, no matter what. I will not pamper you. This will forge a resilience that will help you conquer all of life's obstacles. I do not intend to raise a princess, but rather a warrior with fire in her heart and ice in her veins. In my mind, there is nothing you can't do, no job or goal beyond your reach. I will challenge you so that you stand confidently on your own 2 feet. And I will set the example on how to treat those you love so that when you choose a partner, it will be someone that lifts you up. I will invest my time and energy in you so that when I am gone, enough memories of me will be with you in your heart to keep forever. Stand tall with your shoulders back. This world is yours for the taking.
Boom. Yeah, that's awesome, man.
And obviously I would think the same stuff for my son.
Yeah.
But
well, you'll have to write one a little bit specific to him. Very similar, I'm
please.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And that's really cool. And I bet a lot of people will, A, listen to it, and B, plagiarize it. And,
absolutely.
Yeah, for their own family. But no, that's awesome, man. And like I said, we're going pretty long right now. So I think that's a good place to wrap up this one. What is this now? We've done something like 7 or 8 hours. 7 or 8 hours. Awesome. So, Echo, speaking of having a strategy to get to where we want to go, to be a little bit better across the board in all aspects, what do you got for us?
Got some tips. Oh, by the way, yeah, I read that on Instagram, if I'm not mistaken, and I considered plagiarizing it.
Please
for my
do.
daughter. Now I got the confirmation, or what do you guys call it? Cleared
Cleared
hot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're cleared hot.
All right, there you go. And you were right about the two-faced things when you said, "Oh, let me guess what you're gonna say."
Oh,
you're
okay.
absolutely 100% correct.
Cool.
Yeah, like act one way.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
hey, boss, hey,
Yeah.
hates him.
No, didn't do
Hey,
that.
hey,
No.
you're awesome, you're awesome. And then right when he leaves, then,
Yeah.
you say
That guy's
the
such an
opposite.
idiot.
Yeah, he's such dang.
Yeah,
Pretty
don't
good,
do that.
Jocko. Alas, yes, we're on the path. Okay, good. The strategic versus
Tactical.
tactical. Long game, short
Yeah.
game.
I know you've been in the long game for a while.
Big picture, small picture. All the same thing.
When people ask Echo, what's like the big takeaway? I think that's his primary
That is the
takeaway
biggest
is
one, yes.
focusing on the long game, which he's a football, so he like thinks the game thing, or
Sure.
Super Mario Brothers,
Sure.
as
more
well.
appropriately, yes.
But as opposed to thinking short game.
Yeah.
And if you look at your life every day in long game / strategic instead of short game / tactical, you're gonna end up in a better spot.
Yeah. And when I say the biggest, I mean that's the one that applies to like my whole life. There's the other stuff, no complaining. That one that's a big one. No complaining, no blaming, of course. And then
Resent.
I never really had the resent thing. The jealousy thing, that's something
They're
I
kind
never
of-
really had
they're
that.
kind of entwined.
Yeah. That one to me always felt obvious when
Yeah.
when I discovered like anger. Like when you're mad, that's like something up with you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Even though it's natural, or whatever.
Yes.
Captain Plum. That's
Yep.
one of the biggest things I got from doing this podcast is Captain Plum saying when they were in the Hanoi Hilton,
Yeah.
and him saying if you were annoyed with your prison bunkmate,
Yeah.
it was your fault.
It
I was like,
hit me
dang.
like a diamond bullet
Yeah.
right between the eyes.
That
That
was
was
extreme ownership next level.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
you're
yeah.
always annoyed with that other person. You go, no, actually, you know what? That's my fault.
Yeah, that was good. When I discovered it was a book I was reading called Mind Games, I mentioned it before, and it said small little passage said basically in a nutshell, like when you have anger issues, not to say when you get mad, but it just says if you have anger issues, it has something to do with your self-esteem, like you have low self-esteem. And that hit me really hard. Like, oh man, that hit me so hard that I was like, man, I can never get mad ever again.
That's
It was weird.
that's like a reverse psychology on your ego, because then your ego is going, oh, I got to turn myself down because
Exactly,
I
yep.
got low self-esteem here.
Oh yeah,
It's genius.
Same thing with the drinking. Now you put it into words good. Where okay, so drinking, right? I ended up figuring out, or it being revealed to me that drink, like when you have a drink and you want another one and you want another one, and your mind, and the more you have, the more you sort of want. You can't really stop or whatever. You don't want to stop. It's just your brain tricking you. It's your brain tricking, like your brain is chemically saying, oh, we need this. Hey, we need this. We need more or whatever.
And then
But
you
it's a
felt like
trick.
you were getting manipulated.
I felt like I was a sucker, as you said. And my ego was like, whoa, I'm not a sucker. I don't care if it's my own brain. I'm not a sucker or whatever. And it was just that easy, man. That easy to control it. But yes, it is a reverse psychology on your ego.
Good.
As opposed to regular psychology on your ego, short-term and long-term. Jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you were
Jiu-jitsu?
going to use the word reversal.
Reversal.
I thought that's you were going to handle the transition.
Negative. I'm saying I'm on the first long game and short game. Jiu-jitsu is one of those long game, short game situations. 100%. Part of the path, part of the many activities that we're all doing on the path. Jason Gardner got into good shape, obviously. So we're exercising, we're doing jiu-jitsu, we're eating healthy. We're not getting mad at people. We're not showing resentment. We're not complaining. Various other things that we'll go over. Anyway, jiu-jitsu, when you do jiu-jitsu, you're going to need a gi. What gi do we get? Origin gi. Get it from originmain.com. This is where all their stuff, by the way, is made all in America. From the cotton they grow from the ground all the way to the end.
From the dirt to the shirt.
Shirt, gi,
Yeah.
all that. Anyway, originmain.com. That's
Also
where you get
jeans.
this stuff. Yes. American denim.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which we are producing right now. We are hiring more people to produce even more. So my apologies on it. If you're ordering right now, maybe we don't have your size. We're working it. We're working it hard. We're growing.
Yeah, that was good. Some people at the
I
muster
appreciate that they have the 28-inch inseam. Usually I can only get 30s.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Boom.
There you go.
Accommodating everybody. Yeah, there's a few guys at the muster who had them on. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, a
Couple people got them in.
Yeah, man, it's good. I don't have any, but hey, those are the breaks, and that's just the life I live. Also, they have sweatpants and shirts and whatnot, other stuff on there. Also, supplements.
Supplements.
The best kind of supplements, by the way.
Yeah. There were some people freaking out on the Strawberry Slayer. Have you tried Strawberry Slayer yet?
Yeah, that's just not me.
Oh, you don't like strawberry?
I'm not that kind of strawberry guy. I definitely got some and tried it. Didn't work. I'm a hardcore mint chocolate chip and then the vanilla for mixing.
Yeah, you get that vanilla gorilla and throw it inside your
coffee.
Your coffee.
Heck yeah.
That's your sweetener, kind of. That's your.
That's like my creamer. Yeah. Boom.
Yeah, that was good method.
And then that's Iris is mixing that in
When
everything.
do you drink that in the morning? Like what time?
Like right after I PT.
And then when do you feel hungry for your next meal?
Oh, I don't eat until like 1 or 2 o'clock.
Check.
So it's just that and I'm tired.
And Iris is just putting it in everything? She's making milk pancakes.
Yeah, she's making milk pancakes
whatever.
and smoothies and all that stuff. So we go through quite a bit of milk in our house, yeah, and the kids love it.
Yeah, that strawberry can make it's like a milkshake smoothie hybrid.
Here's
situation.
what I said the other day. If you put in front of me Haagen-Dazs strawberry milkshake,
yes,
right?
Sure.
Nestle's strawberry quick,
yes,
and strawberry Slayer milk, and I was gonna die in 15 minutes. So we're just going pure satisfaction,
Pure
100%.
short
Pure
game.
short term. Like the long game is out of the picture.
Yes, sir.
I'm going straight to the strawberry Slayer milk because that's what tastes the best. That is the taste test, right? No one does a taste test like that. I'm not throwing a caveat on there, but the Haagen-Dazs is going to be sugary, or the Nestle's Quick is going to give you a sugar. No, we're taking the long game totally out of the picture. We're going pure short term tactical taste. Where you at? Strawberry Slayer, bring it.
The name's awesome too.
Yeah, well, you know.
Agree. Also, joint warfare
One
for your
time,
joints.
Pete was trying to like tell me product names, and he's like brainstorming. Pete goes, Pete's like Mr. Creative.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
He's like into being creative.
Yeah, he even told me.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he'll tell you. Like that's his creative stuff, right? So Pete's like hitting me up. He says, so he starts sending me all these things. Strawberry sniper. I'll have to pull out the list. It's so funny. Everything, these random military terms. But yeah, don't catch Pete. He gets into these moods. Creativity is just coming out of his brain, and he'll start hitting me up with texts about strawberry sniper.
Yeah,
I'm
not that mad at strawberry
No,
sniper.
I'm not that mad. He had some ones that were
Slayer is better. I'm
real.
used to Slayer, so when I hear sniper, I'm like, oh, I see why that was like a distant second or whatever.
I'm trying to think of some of the other whack ones he came up because of. Sorry, Pete, bro. But yeah, some of them were real funny. Actually, I texted him. He texted Brian and me. He's texting us all these names, and I was like, okay, stop, no more. And he just started laughing. Yeah, so check that.
Yep.
He probably had a little too much discipline go.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah. How many discipline go are you on right now?
4.
Daily.
No, per day.
Yeah.
Just because I had to get up at 3 a.m. this
Oh,
morning.
right,
I wanted to be able to
What
think.
time did you go to bed?
What, 10 p.m. the night
So you're
before?
on 5 hours of sleep right now.
Yeah.
Did you sleep on the plane?
No.
Can you sleep on planes?
Yes.
I can sleep
Sometimes
on
I
planes
can,
like a
but
boss.
I was just writing all these notes in here to get ready for this, and sometimes I can just turn it off, but I wasn't able to sleep on the plane.
I can sleep on planes, not as well as Echo though. Echo gets the world championship belt for sleeping on planes. We get on a plane. I got a plane with him. Within 38 seconds, he's asleep. But he puts his sunglasses on. He looks like he's awake, but it's a lie. So discipline go. That's a good situation.
I take 2 every morning.
Check.
So get up in the morning, 2 discipline go, and then joint warfare. I'm taking morning and night.
Yeah.
And I notice a difference.
How many do you take?
I'm taking 2 in the morning and 2 at night, and then
And what's your body weight right now?
160, something like that.
I take 3 joint warfare, 3 krill oil. Morning, 3 joint warfare, 3 krill oil. Night. And if I'm if I got a little situation going on,
Sure.
I might. If I'm around, I'll take 3 during the day for lunchtime too.
Dang, so you just got the infusion situation.
Infusion.
Here. It's good, man.
So that's that. Yeah. Don't forget about the Warrior Kid milk too.
Yeah.
For the Warrior Kids.
Yeah. Well, so all right. Well, let's talk about it then. What in your opinion, Warrior Kid milk, strawberry or Strawberry Slayer? Strawberry Slayer is thicker. It's like a shake.
Yeah.
The other one's
I
almost
think
like,
actually, I think the way that they are actually suitable for their audience. So the strawberry, the Warrior Kid strawberry milk is just a little bit lighter, we'll say, because it does have less protein. Mm-hmm. And the adult one is a little bit heavier.
Gotcha.
A little bit more like that Haagen-Dazs hitter.
Sure. Yeah, just like that.
Where are you at, Theo Vaughn, with that hitter?
Also, Jocko white tea. Yes. Very refreshing. I'm going to say the nice stuff about it. Very refreshing. Certified organic pomegranate white tea. Doesn't sound hardcore, but it can after deadlifting 8,000 pounds.
That is kind of hardcore.
Yeah. Proven, by the way, Jason Gardner.
Scientifically.
Yeah, you know all about that. You know what I'm talking about. 100% guaranteed.
Can I get sued for that?
Maybe
I guess if there was someone that couldn't hit an 8,000-pound deadlift, then they might come at me.
Yeah.
Come at me, bro. You know what I'll say? Lift harder.
Yeah, man.
Drink more.
You got to train them.
Because there's no way everyone else is deadlifting 8,000 pounds. What's wrong with you?
The guy, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Check.
makes sense. Also, we have a store. It's called Jocko Store. I think we all know that. This is where you can get rash guards, T-shirts. You're going to represent Discipline Equals Freedom.
Truckers hats.
Truckers hats.
Beanies.
Some beanies there. Man, I got to refill the beanies. Good.
So maybe we don't have beanies there. It's weird. Echo never wears hats, so these apparently are low on the pro. Have you even had a cold head before?
Yeah, I have had a cold head before, sure.
In
Put
Kauai?
a hood on. Well, it depends on what you mean by cold, but you put the hood on, put that lightweight hoodie on, and just curb the coldness on the head. Yeah, man, right when you shave it, like with the, what do you call the razor or the bic, right? They say when you bic your head, that's an expression. Oh yeah, it can get a little nippy, I guess, kind of cold.
Well, anyways, the rest of us would like some more beanies online.
Yes, sir, you got it.
Even for the summertime.
Yes, sir, no problem.
Because if you're up in Maine in the summertime, or you're up in Michigan in the summertime, or you're up in Washington in the summertime, once the sun goes down, you can get that little chili coming at you.
Yeah, I agree, and that's how it is here too, in my opinion.
And you might as well have a beanie that says Discipline Equals Freedom.
Yeah, man, represent with everything. Also, the hoodies, like I mentioned, lightweight hoodies.
Yeah.
Lightweight hoodies. Jason Gardner,
I saw you with it on at the muster.
Look good, right?
Not bad.
Well, thank you.
Now
much.
we're on the how everyone looks over here.
Well, it's part of the game. It can be part of, maybe not for you, aesthetics wise, right? We got functionality, we have aesthetics. They're not exclusive.
Yeah, and you remember I was asking you about the heavyweights because that's what that's what I need up in northeastern Washington on the Canadian border.
We are working.
Functionally, you're correct.
We are working currently at this time so that by the time fall rolls around, we offer the heaviest of heavyweight hoodies.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
Yes.
I'm talking big time.
The real deal.
Yeah.
For you guys,
Where there'll be no doubt in your mind. You'll be like, oh yeah, this is the heaviest hoodie I've ever had.
Putting on 5 pounds.
Yeah. That's what we want. That's what we get to.
But aesthetics, how let's say a factor of 10 is function, right?
You don't have
10.
to answer this question, Jason.
you need level 10 functionality, obviously. Aesthetics, what are you at? What number?
A 7.
That's pretty significant. Jocko, what are you at? 0. Straight up 0.
Doesn't like the lightweight.
The lightweight, anything having to do with fashion. I think you're at a 1. That's what I think.
Yeah, no. If there are some things where I'd be like, this looks stupid, therefore I will not wear it.
Yes.
So we are correct. That puts me at a level 1.
All right. Well, how about this? You got 4 T-shirts.
Mm-hmm.
1 green, like green, not OD green, green. 1 red, 1 black, 1 purple. Which one are you choosing?
Black.
Why? Looks better, right?
Doesn't get dirty as easy.
No, man.
Boom,
All right. Anyway.
Where's that punk card? Just got pulled, boy.
Anyway, some women's stuff on there too. It is jockostore.com. This is where you can get stuff to represent. Yeah, check it out. If you like something, get something.
Did you say originmaine.com?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
That's
cool.
for the origin
Somebody
stuff
might
and
want
the
some of
keys.
that strawberry Slayer.
Of course, man. Of course. Yes. Also, subscribe.
Strawberry Slayer should have like a theme. Like when you say it, it should be like in the background. It should go Strawberry Slayer.
Got a double bass drum hammering.
All
Yeah,
right, sorry.
I don't
I'm
know.
derailing you.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that, but it is a good name for sure, 100%. Also, subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already on iTunes and wherever you get your podcasts.
And don't forget about the Warrior Kid podcast.
Yes.
Which comes out not as frequently as it should. It should step up this summer as time opens up to create and record that particular podcast.
Yeah, it's a good one. For
And then you can get some of that Warrior Kid soap. You're friends with Matt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Up there, Aiden making it on his farm.
Irish Oaks.
Yeah, irishoakrants.com. How do you know him? Through Iris? Did he come to your farm?
Yeah, we were going to buy meat from him. And
Oh,
then when
okay.
he came to deliver it to you, he swung by and visited us.
Oh,
And
right
I
on.
was gone that day, so I didn't meet him, but him and I have chatted on the phone a whole bunch of times.
Awesome. Yeah, he's a firefighter up in Ventura
go.
County. And he's got a farm as well. And his son, Aiden, who's a young Warrior Kid, makes soap so that everyone in the world can stay clean.
Yep.
That's cool.
That's good soap too, by the way.
Yeah.
Functional soap. It's not the decorative. You know, the ones that your little niece makes, and it's like, here. It's not.
You're
that.
not even supposed to really use it.
Yeah,
it's just a decoration.
Yeah, a gift, if you will. Yes. Also, we have a YouTube channel, the Jocko Podcast YouTube channel. This is where you can get the video version, of course. You want to see what Jason looks like. Very handsome. Well, you're a good-looking guy, I'd say.
Bro.
You know, Jocko. What?
Just take it easy.
Hey, man. Either way, if you are interested in that, we have a YouTube channel. Also, some excerpts on there. You know, we'll cut up little excerpts.
And sometimes Echo puts cello music behind them. And he puts explosions in them.
Yeah, sometimes when I want to enhance them, maybe like a certain message that you talk about hits me hard. I say, hey, let me express this. You know, put some stuff on there.
Do you ever feel like maybe we should just get a couple of cello players in here?
No, I
on
don't.
tap?
I don't ever feel like that at all. And I think we should stick with what we're doing. That's my opinion. Here's the thing about YouTube, though, as far as subscribing.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even matter. And you might notice, Jay, do you spend time on YouTube?
Yes.
Okay, so here's what I learned and observed. If you subscribe to someone on YouTube, it doesn't matter that much. Like, their stuff won't show up all the time, like how you would expect. You'd think, like, if you subscribe, their stuff is going to sort of show up on your, the home page or whatever. It doesn't so much do that anymore.
But I get an email every time you post something new.
Okay, now you're
That's
talking.
what I like.
See, yeah, now you're talking, because when you subscribe to someone and you do that additional step, you click on the little bell. I think it's like right next to or on the subscribe button or wherever it is right there. If you do that, then you'll get the alert email. Or
My
whatever.
alerts actually come onto my phone. They spring up. That
from YouTube or
that
for your
Jocko
email?
podcast just posted a new video. That's from the app.
From the YouTube app.
From the YouTube app.
Yes.
Which
So-
is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you want that, this is what I'm saying. So when you subscribe, it's almost like a half subscribe. Not even a half. It's like a quarter subscribe. That's what it is. Because you're sort of like, oh, yeah, I officially sort of subscribe, but YouTube's like, cool.
Okay, I think
we're
we
not going
get
to
it.
let you know.
We
No,
want
I don't
us to
think you do.
subscribe.
This is way different. This is different. I'm saying if you want to subscribe and you want to get alerts and you want it to sort of be in your, what do you call it, the feed or whatever, you got to hit the little bell.
This is what I'm
now.
worried about. I'm worried about, since you're very decentralized, since there's a lot of decentralized command here,
Yes.
I'm worried that if people don't subscribe, all of a sudden you're just going to start putting the little thing at the end of your enhanced videos that says like, share, and click subscribe.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Like, it shows the little finger, click subscribe.
Sure, and ring
and
the
if that
bell.
happens,
No.
we're going to have a problem.
Yes, sir.
The videos going to get centralized real quick. Real quick.
Well, Eric, we're not going to worry about that because I agree with you 100%.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, before you watch
this,
this video, go down to the bottom right and click subscribe now.
I'm just saying, I'm sure there's
It's
some
slightly
function.
annoying. I hate it when I see that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there's some function in that.
What's the equivalent of when you meet someone? Like, what's the equivalent of a human interaction where you say that? Would that be like
somebody dropping the S-bomb?
Would it be like, yeah, that? But it would be like, hey, good to meet you. Can I have a pat on the back, please? Like, isn't that basically what it is? That's the human interaction equivalent.
Yeah.
Like, hey, nice to meet you. Give me your phone, and I'm gonna put my phone number in there.
Yeah.
So I can text you
yes.
what I'm doing.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
Give me a pat on the back. All right, sorry.
No, I might figure that out. That's actually a good little analogy, like comparison task. To find the analogy is what I'm saying.
Psychological warfare, iTunes, Google Play, MP3 platforms. If you want a wake up call,
yes.
Which a lot of people say, can't you make an alarm? Can't you make an alarm? Can't you make an alarm? Yes, you can use psychological warfare as an alarm. There's a bunch of alarm options there. There's also something on there if you're feeling like you want to eat a donut or you want to eat a bag of Cheetos.
Yeah.
When's the last time you ate a bag of Cheetos? One time I ate a whole bag of Hershey's Kisses, and this is when I was in the teens. I'm talking a grown man.
How big was the bag?
Like a good size, like the size of a book. The size of a regular sized book, like it was one of those.
Yeah, it was like 6 years ago. My mom came over to my house and put a whole bag of candy corn. It was around Halloween, and every time I walked by it, I was stuffing the things in my mouth, and pretty soon they were all gone. I'm like, oh my god!
You like candy corn?
They're good. I bet I couldn't eat one right now because I kind of cut sweet stuff out, and every time I slip, I taste something. I'm like, holy cow!
Yeah. The thing I noticed that is with Coca-Cola. Like I can't even come close to drinking a Coca-Cola. I haven't had one a legit like, hey, I'm gonna have a Coke in probably 10 or 15 years or something like that. A long time. Actually, probably even longer than that. But when I look at them, or like the last time I tried to sip one, I was like, ugh.
Yeah,
they're like syrup.
Yeah.
So, anyways.
Yeah, makes sense. I can see that. I can drink Coke though.
So that's psychological warfare. You can get that on any of those platforms. Also, flipsidecanvas.com if you want the visual reminder of something. My brother Dakota Meyer has a company called flipsidecanvas.com, and he's making all kinds of cool stuff. He's about to run out some Warrior Kid stuff too, some little Warrior Kid.
I like his Teddy Roosevelt stuff.
Yeah,
and
he's just
all
getting
that.
after it. Yeah, so he's making some really cool stuff. Art
with layers, by the way.
Art with layers. There you go. I like that.
Also on it, if you're expanding your home gym, you're getting more kettlebells, which I did, by the way. Darth Vader.
How much does it weigh?
70.
Okay.
Here's the thing about the 70 pound. Like, sure, I'm not, I'm going to be more impressed with your 100-pound kettlebell that you were, bragging to me about.
106.
There you go. 106. But the 70 and the 72, the gorilla one or whatever, those, in my opinion, have the most, place.
Universal usage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Universal usage, yes.
Yeah,
exactly,
those are good.
Right?
I agree.
Yeah, plus the Darth Vader. I mean, come on, man. That's the ultimate one, I think.
But they should have made the Darth Vader like 100, at least over 100 pounds, in my opinion.
Maybe.
Jason, you're the Star Wars expert.
Yeah, he should definitely be the heaviest.
Who's the
heaviest.
Who's the most powerful character in Star Wars?
Darth Vader.
Doesn't seem like he's kind of a chump sometimes.
No, negative. No, you'd think the Emperor maybe, but it's Darth Vader. Darth Vader smashes the Emperor.
You're about to get called
Ask Jason
out.
Gardner. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Darth Maul was pretty dang badass too.
No, but I mean,
he got chopped up pretty quick.
But I mean, Darth Vader lost.
Darth Vader lost to Luke Skywalker, who crumbled immediately, by the way.
Yeah.
Later on. So it's Darth Vader, man. I think it's Darth Vader.
Yeah, I like Vader.
Yeah. Nonetheless,
all right.
The real leader lifts people up. You ever see that meme and Darth Vader's holding that rebel guy up by the throat?
There you go.
The real leader lifts people up.
That is so funny.
But Darth Vader went through the whole arc. He was good, bad, good, boom. I don't think I'm sure there's other people.
The dark side.
Nonetheless, yes, I got that kettlebell. There's a lot of good stuff. There's these electrolyte minerals that are part of my daily mega mix with the discipline. Nonetheless, go on there, onit.com/Jocko, and check out some stuff on there. Some really good stuff on there.
All right, some books. Way the Warrior Kid 3. The book is called Where There's a Will. There is a good message. Talked about it already. Check that one out. It is available now. Also, Way the Warrior Kid 1 and 2. Mark's mission is 2. Number 1 is Way the Warrior Kid. Check those out for your kid, to teach your kid these lessons. These lessons that Jason and I just talked about for 2+ hours are broken down, simplified, and sprinkled throughout these books so that your kid is going to read them and your kid is going to say things to you like, Dad, I think that might be your ego talking. So that the idea of ego gets introduced in Way of the Warrior Kid 3. That's where it gets introduced for the first time. So why? Because I wish somebody would have told me about my ego. I wish somebody would have explained to me that I was resentful, I was jealous, I was whining. No one did. Or if my dad did, I didn't listen because I was a young punk. So get those books. Also, if you got a younger kid, you can get Mikey and the Dragons as well. Which, again, this is the thing where your kid gets taught a lesson. Hey, I didn't listen to my dad. I didn't listen to my mom. Jason didn't listen to his mom. Jason didn't listen to his dad. I've been sitting around with a bunch of like really squared away people, business people, and we start talking about kids, and then I say, hey, wait a second, who here listened to their parents? No one raises their hands. Like very few. There's the one occasional, two occasional, Eddie Haskell's, whatever. Yeah. I always listen to my parents. No, you didn't, liar. Most, but what happens is when they hear it from another angle, they listen to it and they go, oh, okay, I understand that. And they think it's cool. It's Uncle Jake saying it. It's not my dad. Because your kids want to rebel against you because they know they have to leave the nest. So they got to set up some kind of a barrier. So they need someone to give them advice. Let that someone be Uncle Jake. Let that someone be the king in Mikey and the Dragons. So there you go. That's that. Also, we got, obviously, Discipline Equals Freedom Field Manual. If you're an adult, you need to know how to get on the path and stay on the path. Just get that book and put it by your bedside and read that. Read a page in the morning. Have you ever had a book that will get you out of bed?
No.
Okay, Discipline Equals Freedom Field Manual. Put it next to your bed.
Yeah.
You'll be like, oh, I'm getting out of bed. I'm going to go get some. So then there's Extreme Ownership and the Dichotomy of Leadership. These are books about leadership written by me and my brother Leif Babin about the lessons that we learned overseas. Now you can apply them in your team, in your business, in your life. Also, we got Echelon Front, Leadership Consultancy. And we're very busy. You know why we're very busy? We're very busy because no matter what problem you have in your team, in your business, the problem is a leadership problem. And if you want to get it solved, you got to solve the leadership problems that you have. And if you can do that, then you're going to solve the problems in your company. So it's me, it's Leif Babin, JP Donnell, Dave Burke, Flynn Cochran, Mike Sorelli, Mike Baima, and Jason Gardner. If you want us to help you, go to echelonfront.com for details. We got the muster. Chicago's done. Did it sell out? Yes, it did. How'd you like the muster? That was your first muster, Jason. How'd you like it?
Wow. That was amazing.
Don't you wish you got to go to that when you were 25 years old?
Yeah,
30
and
years old?
I was super impressed by it. There were people that had their kids there.
Yeah.
That's not normal, right?
I mean, when you say there was people, there was probably... Okay.
And by kids, there were, I'm talking, there was one 13-year-old that was there, but there was quite a few like teenagers and high school age.
18 to, I would say 16 to 21. Right. There'll be a good amount, maybe a dozen, right? And then, but there was one 13-year-old little warrior kid that was just straight getting after it.
Yeah, that's
he was
not
coming
common.
to early morning PT.
Yeah,
Warrior Kid rash guard, by the way.
Doing it.
You didn't mention that Warrior Kid rash guard.
Yeah.
If you want to get that.
Yeah, there's
anyways,
Warrior Kid rash guard.
That's the muster. They always sell out. The next one is in Denver. It's 19th and 20th of September. And it's going to sell out. Sydney, Australia, December 4th and 5th. It's going to sell out. We got people in Australia? Yes, we do. When I went to Brizzy, there was people from all over Australia coming to hang out.
Oh, yeah.
Home of David Hackworth, Brisbane. That's where he moved.
Take it.
Yeah.
Cool.
And if you want to come to that, go to extremeownership.com. Get on it early. EF Online. if you can't come to the muster, or you can't bring your entire company to the muster because the muster is expensive, then go to efonline.com. And what that is, it's leadership training. But the thing is, leadership training is not an inoculation. You can't just go to leadership training one time and then you're like, oh, cool, I got extreme ownership. Now I'm good to go. Yeah. Doesn't work like that. Just like you can't go to one jiu-jitsu class or even 1 week's worth of jiu-jitsu class. You can't go to a 2-day jiu-jitsu seminar. Now you're good to go. No, you need to keep training. And that's what happens here as well. So it's not an inoculation. You got to get it repeatedly. And that's what EF Online does. Or if you can't make it to the muster, go to efonline.com. And also EF Overwatch, taking proven leaders from spec ops and combat aviation and putting them in companies in the civilian sector that need leaders. Now you might think, well, they don't have any experience in my industry. Cool, they'll learn it. That's what we do. Hire for their character, hire for their leadership capability, and then teach them the industry specifics they'll pick up, and they will fill in the leadership holes that are causing you problems. And if you want to hear more about 90s TV shows or Super Mario Brothers from Echo,
No. All right.
or you want to hear more about war or leadership from Jason or me, then all of us are on the interwebs. Jason is on Instagram, jason.n.gardner. He's on Twitter, Jason N. Gardner. He's on Facebook as well, Jason Gardner. And obviously, Echo and I are both on those platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and at Facebook. Echo's at Echo Charles, and I am at Jocko Willink. And thanks to all the veterans out there like Jason who did their time on the line, and thanks to everyone else out there right now in the fight. Thanks for protecting our way of life. You got any other closing thoughts?
Nothing for the group.
Check. And also thanks to police and law enforcement, firefighters, paramedics, EMTs, dispatchers, correctional officers, border patrol, Secret Service, and all the first responders. Thank you all for keeping us safe here at home. And remember that we all make mistakes. But the mistakes that you can't recover from are the ones that you don't own, the ones that you don't admit. So step up, admit your mistakes, and own your mistakes. And then, no matter what, keep getting after it. And until next time, this is Jason Gardner and Echo and Jocko out.